You don't want to slow. No. Steven. She's shielded.
It's 9:30. We'll call the meeting to order with everyone present. First on the agenda, MJ Hatfield, Roadside Maintenance.
I hope it's all right that I face the public because when I'm sitting out there, I can't hear. On Friday, I sent out letters to the Board of Supervisors. These are personal questions. So I'm just going to read the letters. The subject is right-of-ways. Highway 139, adjacent to the Upper Iowa River Bridge. I have biases. I'll state those up front. Ecology and diversity of life. Which is not just about pretty flowers. People have mentioned that. It's not. I've also noted more roadside work in my northwest corner of Winneshiek County. I live north of Kendallville on the Upper Iowa River in the past couple of years than ever before. Occasionally burned. It's just in the last couple of years. When the cutting of roadside trees has come up in casual conversation with friends and neighbors, they sometimes wonder out loud, why are these trees being cut? We like trees. I simply reply, safety. Last year, I saw someone out in the county spraying roadside woody vegetation. And of course, what and why? It turned out it was Corey Meyer doing the spraying. And I said, congratulations, I like to see this. The gist of the conversation went on to say, and I paraphrase, I don't want to quote him, that there was going to be more work in this vicinity in a couple months. This is my vicinity, so I wanted to know more about it. The initial work was done, and I've got pictures of that. I've only got one, and this is how it was left. And we're going to come back, clean it up. It's a mess. It's hard to walk in. I can't possibly. Shrubs come up in that. You can't get to them unless that's cleared off. So it was going to be piled and it was going to be burned. So I made an appointment to talk to Corey and his finished cutting it. There's a big dead cottonwood. The last one fell across the road. I don't know where this one's going to fall. At least the county cleans it up if it falls across the road, but it's more dangerous. If it falls into my place, I bet I'll have to clean it up. And cottonwoods are big and messy. So anyhow, this was an incentive for me to do all the woodies on my side of the right of way. Then we could get it cleaned out and maybe caretaken. On my side, it's CRP, so I'd like to have all those woodies gone. And when I burn, we can burn both road ditches and the CRP. Area. Part of the farm across the way, and I could even get down there to mow. But then things changed. On February 27th, I came to, I think it was my first or my second board. But of course, how would he? It takes care of the whole county. So I asked him if this was going to be finished, and he said yes. I would like some specifics on when this is going to be finished, how it's going to be finished, and what it's going to be planted with. Bjerke. I asked Lee about this, and he roadside program has been suspended. So I would just like answers for this specific road ditch. Next letter. Sort of the same thing, but it also includes the roadsides up on another area and at the end of Coldwater Creek Road. I moved here from Story County, which is the headquarters for the Iowa DOT. And Story County was one of the first counties to implement the IRBM program. When I moved up here, I thought it was pretty cool that Winneshiek County finally got on board with this because I've seen the results down there. Let's get rid of these woodies. Let's plant native grasses and forbs being flowers. And this could easily be caretaking still takes work, but we can keep those woodies from coming back. It's also habitat, a continuous corridor through the whole county of habitat. So I bought the place and have been paying taxes since 1973. I started my first prairie and road ditch in 1997. I can pass this around. This is just pictures of that first prairie. Notice there's not many woodies in there because I can take care of it and keep them out of there. I also go after wild parsnip. I really hate wild parsnip. I even got a neighbor, John Ryan, to mow with his batwing mower, his land by me. So we got at least one neighbor starting to caretake a little bit more than he was. The road ditch, parsnips, handweed parsnips. I dress head to toe in an outfit, and I still get burned when they fall on my face. But that's, if you can get rid of them, that you don't have the seed coming in. But one of the problems is when they mow the road ditches, it spreads seeds around. So I go after that. I hired Aaron Tuzona, tree doctor, of woodies. He couldn't come back the third year, but it was a start on getting rid of the county's woodies. I backpack spray bird's foot trefoil crown vetch in rows that are adjacent to my property and poison hemlock because it's not in my neighborhood yet, but it's just around the corner and it's valid. On that, I've handed out to 3 neighbors who have raised cattle and about poison hemlock. It's in the county. It's nasty stuff. One gentleman really didn't care. Another one was thankful that I gave him the information. And the third person went out there and within 3 days, he dug the plants that were in that road ditch. And we get more people taking care of this stuff. Okay, it's very slow. Taking care of road ditches is very slow. It's not my focus. It's not my priority. It's not what I want to spend my time on, but somebody's got to do it. And so I was delighted, really delighted that the county was going to start the process of taking care of road ditches. As to the road ditch in question with all that woody that I'd really like to see cleaned up, I've got NRCS, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and Iowa DNR have said that I can get seed from them because I don't know what happened to the county seed. I don't know if it's still around or what, but I would like to see it in prairie. So my questions that I'd like answered that don't need to be answered today, but sometime I'd like them answered. Will this project be finished before the cottonwood falls? What happens when the cottonwood falls in my property? Does the county help me pick it up, clean it up, chainsaw it, haul it out of there? And when would this happen? When would all of this happen? And how will it be finished? I'd like to know the particulars. What would be planted in there? I'd rather it not be non-natives. And then I brought some, I'm really into, oh, I got another minute. I'm into insects, but I know that everybody's eyes will glass over to that. So I brought, do have the rusty patch, but it's not my favorite. My favorite is the red belted. It's just gorgeous thing. I don't see it very often. I didn't bring enough for everybody, but brought it, for you to pass around. So that's, I work on insects. Prairie plants harbor many insects. Insects are pollinators, all sorts of things. Not today, but sometimes soon.
Okay. Thank you, MJ.
Thank you.
Good job. Just to let you guys know, we got a letter from Winneshiek County Board of Health that did the annual Winneshiek County Jail Tour. So I'll pass this around for you guys to read. How's it take your chair, Lee?
Morning.
Good morning.
You can only take so much vacation.
There is a point to that.
I would have left a few days earlier, but I was overruled, so. I think you dropped that in the office. If it's not yours, let me know.
I bet it is.
If it's not yours, I have no idea what's wrong with it.
So next on the agenda, 9:40 is Lee Bjerke County Engineer with road matters.
All right, I have a voucher for, 175th Street, first one. They're, the removals, they're into the city now, so, and that's slow going because they're doing it in halves and making sure everybody can get in and out and home on Sunday. But it looks good. Tentative, and I'm gonna really emphasize. They are hoping to be mainline paving by May 8th. That's what they would like to do. I mean, depending on how our removals go and what other weather they have where they're at and can get finished up, will have a lot of impact on that, but, that is what they're hoping to do, and quite honestly, I hope they can do that too, because the sooner they get in, the sooner they get out. And we're done, so,
Just the one signature.
yeah, you only need to sign the one sheet. You can sign any of them, you just have to sign it. Okay. As an FYI,
You want this?
as an FYI, we have one of the road crews going to be retiring. His last day, correct that. On Monday's May 1st.
Yeah.
Yes, Monday, May 1st, he will start being on vacation. He will burn his vacation until it's gone. He will come in the last day of his employment, technically his last day, which will probably be in the first week of July. So he will be gone for a couple months, and we're going to have to move guys in and out of his machine to keep him.
Is that out of the Ridgeway? shop?
Yes, yeah. And we'll have to put some, pardon?
Yeah, Ridgeway.
And we'll have to put someone in his machine when it's fit to blade, and, so we will be short. We'll work through everything, so the day after his last day, the new employee, wherever that employee will end up being, he might be in that machine, he might be somewhere else, but, that new employee will start. So we don't have a overlap of, people on the books.
Just so everyone knows, the county's policy is you cannot extend your time of employment with leave time. So he has to take his vacation and then come and work one day.
One day.
Otherwise, if we made his last day, whenever his last day is before vacation, he would just get the rest paid out as a lump sum,
Correct.
which he would still be paid for it. He just, then he wouldn't have the extension of his insurance and so on.
Is it possible to start looking for a new employee right away in May?
We have, because of the collective bargaining agreement, well, back that up. Because of what our policy is, the guys internally get first crack at moving around.
Yeah.
If they have to go through that, I mean, it may be one step, it could be five. It's just who wants to move where. Once that's done, we have a position that none of the internal guys want, then that's the one we advertise. That's why.
The goal would be,
I don't know where that new
Yeah,
person
kind of forgot about that.
the goal would be, if possible, to have the new person lined up to start the next day after he works his last day, but you don't know if it can get done that quickly or not.
So
Um,
how long has Luce been working for the county?
I don't think.
20 years, maybe.
20 plus.
I know it's 15 plus. He's been with us for quite a while. He's done a lot of different jobs over the years. Started with the bridge crew, was the sign man for a while. Went to Ridgeway, was a truck driver for a while, now he's been in the blade. So he's done almost everything we do, short of being a mechanic.
So,
Been a good employee, really good one. One of your trucks is done. And, it's going through its final inspections. Jeff's gonna meet with, his name just escaped me, Gene Carpenter, down in Don's truck, make sure everything's the way we wanted it. Gene likes to take it for one final spin, to make sure, everything's working the way it's supposed to work, and we don't
Where the others, you might be able to plow snow with it.
No. We should have been plowing snow with these anyway, but. And, well, we ordered them in May of 21, so that's almost 2 years on the nose. And this is just the first one. There's 3 more to go now. So, I guess that is some good news that it's there. Another FYI thing, and, we got ahead of this because DOT let us know. The new guardrail standards that are on our bridges, the approach guardrail, not stuff along the roadway, the approach guardrail where you hit it, it crumples. There was a lawsuit in a different state. And the way these guardrail are put together, if you were to look at it and see this design, you would look at it and say, that doesn't make sense. It just in your head, it doesn't logically make sense, but it's done this way for a reason. There's a bolt that does not go through the rail itself. It sits behind the rail and holds the blocks together, and the rail just lays up against it. It's meant to pull away. In this other state, somebody pushed that bolt through the W-beam rail, and a car hit it, and that didn't bend away like it was supposed to, and there was a fatality. It went to court, and that was what they were hanging. I don't know if it was a state or a county or what, but they have 6 of those guardrail in our system. We checked all 6. 3 of them were installed improperly. That bolt is through where it's not supposed to be. So we are going to be going out and taking those apart, which is not as simple as you would think pulling a bolt is, and getting those 3 the way they're supposed to be. So we've got 50% of them that are right, 50% of them that are not. But if they get hit, we've got an exposure there. So you wouldn't think one bolt would make this kind of difference, but it absolutely does. And it's how that guardrail is designed to pull away when you hit. And just so if people say, why are you guys tearing our guardrails apart? This is why. So
Was that information distributed to all engineers in the country through,
I can't.
I mean, how did you hear about it?
I would hear it.
Okay.
I would assume every public entity in the nation's been notified, but I can't speak to that. I know the counties have been notified, DOT's been notified. I would assume the cities have been notified, because DOT is very good about that, but just so you are
So
aware of that.
is that primarily the bridge crew that takes care of that?
Yeah, it probably will be. They're not gonna be thrilled about it. Like I said, it's not just pull the bolt and make it different. It's, you gotta get it now behind the rail and get the bolt in, and so you have to basically take the whole rail apart. It's like trying to get that wire behind the sheet rock. It's, yeah, it's not easy.
You have to tear the sheet down.
Yeah. So, but we'll get those 3 going and, get ourselves in better shape. We talked about 175th Street, Bridge 237, the substructures are all in, the piers, the abutments are in. We got the false work calculations in, those are fine. We're just waiting for the false work to show up. Once that shows up, and I hope it's this week, it's supposed to be fairly decent. They can get that driven, and then they can start putting the deck together. Because it's a slab bridge, the false work has to hold the deck.
That's on 210s?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, they said they were ahead of schedule. I have to be driving by them stock.
Oh, yeah, Brennan,
They're doing well with it.
Brennan's, if you ever get a chance to watch him, the thing you'll really pick up with Brennan is every motion they're doing something. It might be little, but every motion counts. They don't have just wasted motion. They're always moving because they're looking forward. And that's why I'm really, this county's been spoiled to have them putting in as many bridges.
Efficiency at its best.
Oh, and well, a lot of busy equipment too. I mean, they can afford the really
Better.
good equipment to do that stuff. We don't do it enough to justify it. So, but, and we're lucky. Brennan's done a lot of work for us, and they're very good at what they do, and they're very easy to work with. So, do that. Oh, just a little update on that SS4A grant. We got a meeting this Friday with Kimberly Horn again. And they are moving along exactly as they hoped to. Which I was a little nervous because when the NOFO came out, timeline that everybody anticipated we were gonna get, which is the timeline we got last year, was shortened dramatically. We didn't have to be until September. Away from us. But Kimley Horn is, they're very happy with where they are. We'll get another update here this Friday.
There was some question, a couple weeks ago, I think, maybe, when you were here about the safety related grant, and whether it was this one or a different one that for that road that used to be the highway that goes into Spillville, it's now county road. Is that one related to this, or is that a separate grant?
It's a separate grant. It's in the same federal bill, but it is a completely separate grant. It has its own rules.
So that one's submitted separately. It isn't relying on this Kimley Horn thing.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
No. My opinion is the stuff Kimley Horn is doing for us helps with those other grants, but they're not a requirement under those grants. So if you can reference these things that Kimley Horn's doing for us, which we don't have done yet, it helps. Is it a deal breaker? I'm not gonna tell you that. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but it definitely helps. If you're not real familiar with federal grants, they have a lot of buzzwords they like, and if you can hit those buzzwords, it really helps you out. So,
It's true of a lot of grants.
yeah, and I'm not a grant writer. I just unfortunately have been exposed to quite a few, because they're an issue. But, I gotta back up to 175th Street. With the timetable that, Kroll has given us, the guys in the office, their time out on the road just really jumped, because we have to be out in front of that paver. We gotta get all the staking in so we can get the profile set to it. So when they come in, they're good to go. And the last thing they want is to pull the paver and be ready to go, and we still don't have, oh, jeez, I just put that right in his face. And we don't have that profile done, so, if you walk in, you're probably not gonna see those guys, because they're gonna have a lot to do. We are running over on Chokestone, which we knew we were gonna do. With the snow and the rain that we got last week, they found some soft spots, and we had to core them. That was all there is to it. We had to core it. Otherwise, people weren't getting in, and we can't have that happen. So we gotta get them.
Which is that? What is that?
It's, the Chokestone is basically, it's identical to the Roadstone we put on, it's the same stuff. And we did use some macadam, but the Chokestone is, nobody wants to drive on macadam. It's a 3-inch nominal. I mean, it's like driving on softballs, and you don't want that. I mean, that's a solid base, but you gotta put something on top of it to drive on. And the thing with Chokestone is, if you have the macadam underneath and you have these big boys, you just lose some of it. That's the nature of the beast. If you put it just on mud, you're gonna lose a lot of it. That's the nature of the beast. And so we guesstimated what we thought our overrun is gonna be, and Mike thinks that we're probably gonna overrun that too. So, it's a shot in the dark of what it was gonna be, but I think we're gonna have to work out some more, because we knew it was muddy, and the rain and the snow just does not help at all. It's open.
Yeah, we opened up the part of that first part they did for traffic. Or just local primarily, but
Yeah, they took out I'm gonna call it the north lane, the westbound lane, about to Peebo. And now and that's rock, so people can drive on that. Now they're switching to the southbound lane. They're gonna tear that all the way out back to 52 and get that ready to be driven on. And then they're gonna skip over now and then go back the west side of Peebo. So now Peebo can get in the other way. And it's a lot of leapfrogging. It's not the most efficient way to do it, but the only way we're gonna get everybody in. And so that's how we got it going. That's about it. Unless you guys got anything else for me?
No,
All right, and that was
Sounds good.
yours, you think?
pardon?
That,
Yes, this is
Okay.
nice.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay,
This guy leaving, retiring.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like? Since I'm new, I guess, there's crews that do specific things, obviously. Bridge through and
To some degree, yes.
who would cut brush and trees in the ditch, since that seems to be a big topic.
They all do it. They all plow snow. They all have a snow route when they go out and cut trees. Like the bridge crew in the summer, they are housed out at Freeport. That's where they all come from. In the winter, they don't, hasn't always been that they would get farmed out to different shops. The guy that runs the excavator, he gets farmed out to a shop. The guy that puts our signs in, he gets farmed out to a shop because they all have plow routes. Most of those guys run a truck in. If it's an open winter and we don't have snow to plow, all those guys grab a chainsaw and they cut trees. If we have a ton of snow, they don't get as much trees cut. That's been kind of the reality of it.
So in most of the time, a lot of your tree cutting happens in the winter.
Into the winter.
Did you get a lot done this winter?
Yeah, quite a bit done this winter.
And then like if spraying,
Mm-hmm.
who would do that?
We have 4 guys that currently have a license to do it, and they are the only ones. Just, there's a lot of, lack of better word, there's paperwork that has to be done. You have to be certified to do it, and there's paperwork of what you did. You have to document it. And we have 4 guys that has that.
And to clarify, is one of them your other roadside maintenance personnel that hasn't moved on? Is he one of those
He
4?
is one.
Yes.
So you have him and 3 other regular.
The maintenance superintendent is one. And they've had their licenses for a long time.
I've had the question from guys in the shop, why should we get a license? Because we used to have liability and we don't get any more pay or anything. Have we got any way to mitigate that? So that, remember, we had a conversation about making sure we had somebody licensed in each shop to be able to spray.
It's never been a condition of employment in the past. If that's something the board wants to do, I think we gotta have a conversation with Andy and HR about that. Is without the,
You pay a premium for assistant foreman in each shop. I mean, do
Right.
you have that be part of being the assistant foreman, as they also have a license since they're getting paid a premium?
you could, absolutely could. I just think you're gonna have to have
Just
a
an idea.
conversation with Andy and.
You may have to make that premium a slight bit higher too than what it is, because it is not substantial amount.
There's only 4 guys that spray for a reason. A lot of the guys, they don't want anything to do with it.
Mhm.
And I don't blame them. I don't want to spray. That's not something I want to do. But
I think you would have to make it well worth their time in order to.
I
get them
agree with
certified.
you. I mean, working with those type of and there's a lot of knowledge to that other than you just mix and go, because, we found out that historically, sometimes we were using stuff that works for all of these things, but it didn't work for this thing, and nobody knew that. We just didn't have the knowledge base for it. And, we got a lot of that change. And, the DNR requires us to say what we're doing, what we're spraying, when we're spraying, the conditions that it was in, and, the quantity of it. We have to document that stuff. And, we've got organic farmers out there, and just even conventional farmers. They don't want us goofing up and getting in their fields. I mean, there's a lot to it. And, I agree with you that, if you're going to say you guys are the sprayers, I think you gotta address that to make it attractive for them to want to. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So does making
Oh,
it
yeah.
attractive for them to want to do that?
I don't know what else you would do.
Well, if you had a premium, that's a cost.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I don't know of any other way to do it.
I've seen you've been doing
Yeah.
quite a bit of, cutting on some willows and stuff this
Mhm.
spring. Are those getting, treated after they've been cut?
They should be. I can't speak to any specific site, but they should be. I mean, you have a short window and that thing will scab over and now you can't treat it. You gotta cut it again.
There.
the guys that are doing it should be the ones that know. I mean,
Is that what, like, when we had a roadside vegetation management person, would they have been overseeing?
yeah,
all of
that was his responsibility. Yeah. I think that's kind of falling to Jeff now.
The other?
The maintenance, yeah, the maintenance superintendent.
The other IRBM in play, the maintenance.
Yeah.
superintendent.
Yeah, Troy is licensed, isn't he also?
I believe it's Jeff, Todd, Kyle. Yeah, I think it might be. Troy. I have to go back and
Yeah,
look.
it's all right.
Anyone else have anything for Lee?
Oh, just like. There was a picture shown of a tree going right up alongside of the road. It's been there for,
Long time.
who would be in charge of like calling that to the road crew's attention? Other than the person who's driving around it, follow the road.
I mean, if it's right on the side of the road, I hope our guys can see it. Because they
It
shouldn't be.
appeared that it was, I mean.
We've got trees that have been standing where they stand long before I was ever here.
No, I mean, it just looked odd because it looked like it was right on the road bank and
And
60 years old, so.
yeah, and they're out there. There's one that sits in the middle of a little, where the road's wide around it, and it's big. It's been there for, I don't know, probably 100 years old. It's huge.
Somebody who would like say, oh, somebody needs to come back out and cut this, or they run back to the shop.
Typically, that's well, Corey was doing that, but before that, the foreman would be, they couldn't plow because there was no snow to plow. They would go out and say, we're gonna work this area and get these trees out. And they just made those choices. Where can we get to? And, when it was fit to cut, they would cut. When it was not fit, they would plow snow or do something else that had to be done. And that's how it's historically done. And ideally, some of the, well, I shouldn't say ideally, but a lot of those instances, when you want to do a lot of big tree removal, you need equipment. You're not gonna stand out there with a bunch of guys in a chainsaw. You need an excavator to move things, and we gotta find a place to put it, because at some point we have to burn it. And you can't just burn it anywhere, and, because the DNR has regulations on that too. If we burn, well, Fayette County did it, and they taught the whole state what not to do. Is they burned the brush pile, and it was going fine. It's on private land. The farmer worked out a deal with them. The neighbor had a shed, and an ember got to that shed and took the shed. The county bought a shed. So you gotta be very careful what you do when you do it, because you can hurt yourself.
And the roadside program had been moving a lot of these trees. And we just heard from MJ, I don't know where you are now, that they worked on her trees. They're just getting started.
When you get landowners that work with you, it makes it easier, because you've got to put this stuff.
Yeah, otherwise they're saying, well, that's my tree, don't cut it.
Yeah,
I don't want
and
to
we're
tell
always
you
going
know,
to,
We're
we're always
gonna
gonna
have
have
both
that
sides
issue.
in that matter.
There's a lot of trees that we've gone out, we've staked the right of way, and the stake of the right of way is right through the middle of the tree. Who owns it? If the landowner loves that tree, they're gonna scream that's your tree or their tree. If they want that tree gone and it's looking like it's gonna fall, I guarantee you it's gonna be our tree. And it's not the simplest thing in the world.
Got a few minutes.
Spraying, do we contract out people to spray? I mean, other outside agencies?
Not typically spraying, we have not. I don't know of any time we ever did. Because we've always had guys that had licenses and would do it. We've contract out like guys to remove trees, and then they'll like spray the stumps when they're there. But we haven't contracted anyone to go and like work this area of roadway.
I saw in some of the reports from other counties, they hire people.
Yeah, that's gonna be all over the spectrum around the state. And
Mhm.
Yeah, IDOT has a statewide contract and all spraying's done by an
I didn't know
outside contractor.
if I'd ever done that.
we get volunteer. Things through and everything, and
Okay, yep.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you.
What do we have for consent agenda?
Got the minutes from the last meeting, claims, which you've been looking through here, and the VA monthly report.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second,
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Good.
The VA report.
Do you have any committee reports?
I just met with the finance, Upper Explore Land Board, and they're trying to figure out how to raise more money to make ends meet with the people they got. They haven't had a raise in their grant fund and stuff. They're running on the same percentage for X many years, and they can't. Expenses go up and income stays the same. Trying to figure out how to generate some more income.
They see any avenue in being able to figure that out?
They're just grasping for straws. We gotta try and, I don't know how to. There's a lot of housing and grant money out there, and right now they got nobody to manage it. Rachel's doing it herself, but she's the head, and she's not schooled specifically for that. It's just, yeah. And they can't afford to hire somebody because they don't have the money to pay them, and yeah. It's yeah, all these entities are, it's getting tough. Income don't go up, but everybody wants something free.
I heard the same thing, the city council meetings that I attend to down in my district do the same thing. And then they have budget, the budget constraints are just choking them.
Yeah, they have not gotten a raise, and
The regulations continue to go on and causing more stuff they have to do and deep.
yeah, I mean, they're just,
And I've heard,
Well, that's a good way to lose good personnel too.
I know, yeah, they can't.
they're,
They do an amazing job.
Oh, and they got their, then they got the match they usually put, where they're gonna ask for the counties to pay the whole thing. If they can't, having scrounge them up $19,000 out of 5 counties, extra they would have, which would help, Cause I think we give them like 38 and then they county said 19,000 extra there they would have to try to help things, but yeah, it's just, they're strapped, and how do you?
well, I heard one city tell me that says, we don't know, we're going broke.
Yeah.
And there's a whole raft across the nation, small towns that are having to go disincorporate, and then it becomes a problem of the county.
County, yeah.
We take all liability.
You take like all these sewer projects, I mean, there's
Look at this now.
Ridgeway, gonna be what, 2 point some million now?
Yep.
I think
what
they're
is the Iowa surplus right now?
But,
Yeah. Cities and counties.
There's money.
that project doubled.
There's
What-
money out
yeah.
there.
But it's not trickling down.
Exactly.
The juvenile detention, the previous director is gone, and there's one of the other employees now is leading that, but I don't know, I think probably because of consolidation that's happening with the state. Every time you turn in the meeting, somebody rings, so. And they're opening the new residential facility is still on hold until they get a ramps done, which they were talking about that January. I started, still not.
Yeah, I had an executive Winneshiek County Development and Tourism meeting, and we just went over a few things that we're gonna bring up to the full board at the next meeting, so. Couple ideas, I just don't wanna lay that out until the full board makes a decision on it. Ten, next on the agenda, the miscellaneous, we have the American Rescue Plan update.
Okay, Shirley asked to give a quick update on this. I did put some extra copies on the table there if anyone wants to see it. American Rescue Plan was 3.8 million total. You can see our payments from up above. The annual report to the feds is due at the end of April this year in a week. And Paul Berlin takes care of that for us. We pay him to do the management of the money with the feds on that. There's also this talk about clawback at the federal level, so there may be some incentive for you to think about what to use the extra money for. Basically, we had it all obligated and spent, but then remember Paul Berlin got a different grant for some of those watershed projects. So what was gonna be 300,000 went down to like 75,000. And so that left some extra money. We used some to buy the land for those 911 towers. But we still have some unobligated money. You can see there 163,000. And actually, the recorder and my office have all of our records scanned. We have a little bit of training for our employees yet, but we're gonna have around 10,000 left of what we estimated on that. So that's gonna go in there. So there may be some incentive to use that. I mean, the easiest, if you don't want to try to dig up other projects, is you've got 2.7 million that you're gonna pay for next 3 years. So you could just at some point say you're gonna use any unspent money towards that. And that would be a way to then make sure it's all obligated, so there's nothing that's gonna get clawed back.
Then we got the Steines sewer project too. They might
come in last.
They might come, yeah,
Yeah, but that's the Ford project didn't come in less,
no.
significantly over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but due to some of the extra grant funding and
Funding,
stuff that the time
yeah, I don't
awarded,
know.
that's where money coming back.
That's the max we gotta give them. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we're maxed out at that. They can't, yeah.
When's a reasonable time to make a decision on what to do with that?
I don't know if any
173,000.
federal level, they may decide they're going to fall back based on your reports that are filed at the end of April, and then we're too late. I don't know. Or it may take them a year to decide what they're gonna do, so we may be a lot of time. But it might be worth
Yeah.
considering anyway, especially as we're rounding up our fiscal year to say, hey, what can we say where this money is gonna be used for? Just
I would
so
say
doesn't-
put it towards towers, cause we gotta pay for them anyway.
That
We're
serves the whole
obligated, so
county. That's a project that serves everybody.
Everybody. in
And you
town.
know, cause you already promised 2.7 million for
Yeah,
that, so there's no way.
The more we pay on them,
Yeah.
they pay down, the less we gotta pay, so.
Is,
And I don't think you should take action today. I bring this forward just for you
Yeah.
to know what we're.
and is that, the second line says payment anticipated for the second half. Is that just a typo or is that?
Oh, that's been received, yes.
Okay.
I didn't change the label since I put this on here. I'll change that though. The second half came about a
You
year
just
ago.
took $2 million away from us, Ben.
Yeah, no, there's,
No, I knew it was already here.
yeah,
I did too. You spent it.
It's got.
I do.
I get that. OICs have received spelled wrong on the line above. I'll get that fixed up, but yeah. I'm more about the numbers, but you know.
Is that kind of consensus? That's where we want to go and maybe just put it on
Put
next
on the
week's
agenda.
agenda.
I think
That's
that's
a
a good
good
idea.
action, yeah. That way they know what to use to, they
We don't want to
use it
get
instead of
any,
lose it.
any back.
Yeah, we don't want to have to send any back.
No,
Can avoid it.
If that Senate bill passes, that is going to modify the EMA levying authority, Ben?
Yes,
Is that going to help reduce our long-term liability on the other payments beyond this current one we'll be making in the 23-24?
so it'll come out of your budget. So you'll have a big reduction. I mean, you'll just be able to levy for less. But that does come out of the supplemental budget, which is not restricted, even in the
Right.
talks of the budget bills that are at the state, their restrictions are always targeting the general fund. So that additional cut that you get to make for EMA doesn't help you really any other than if they're gonna add it. So the EMA would add it as a levy at their end. So yours would go down, theirs would go up. The
Right.
taxpayer would pay the same. It would look better on your budget, but you know,
But we're not.
it doesn't really save anybody any money or
Just
anything.
range.
No, it just, yeah.
Yeah.
And raise
Just
it.
shifts it.
Yeah. All right, next on the agenda, 10:15, discussion of roadside management program.
Yeah, so, I had
Surely ask
this
for
on
that.
here. We just never seem to have time in our agendas to actually have a professional, reasoned, open conversation about the program. And I'd like to entertain that today for the next 15 minutes if we can. So, I'd like to ask first, do you guys have, I know there's been an open records request for it too, and I know I asked for it last week or 2 weeks ago, where the numbers are for the 250,000 and the 400,000. Do you have those numbers yet?
Did we write them down? No.
Where did you get them?
By looking at our budget numbers and making estimates off of our budget numbers, surely that's all public record.
Did you ask Lee Bjerke or Corey Meyer about any of those numbers?
We did ask Lee Bjerke about those numbers. He never responded to us with the detail we asked.
No. You said those numbers before. I'm just wondering what they were based on. You have nothing written down?
I don't write down when I'm contemplating, I don't write all those down. I don't know if you do.
So you contemplated the numbers without consulting with the engineers department?
No, I went by our budget, surely.
That doesn't make sense though, because I'm also going by our budget and I didn't come up with that at all.
And I talked,
I'll move
surely,
on to
I
the
went out and
next
talked to our
question.
road crews also about the work that they do out there in the field.
Yep.
And when I talk about numbers, it also includes all the work that you heard Lee just talk about what our men do on the roadsides during their off time. All of the
Yep.
brush removal, all of the cutting, all of the spraying, everything else that our regular 5 road crews do along our roadsides in this county.
And I just heard Lee say time on the road crew just jumped. We need them on the road in front of Kroll on that project. I don't think
That's
we can
one
depend on our
project,
road
you're right.
crews completely. We need. The other question I have,
The time on the road
there are,
crews,
let me finish my
let me
question.
finish what you just said about 175th Street. If you recall what Lee said, because the project is moving quickly, he said that our survey crew out of the courthouse will be stretched and pushed out there to do the staking work necessary for 175th Street. Our road crews, which would be, Fort is not responsible
Our
for the
road
work
crews
on
need to be working the
175th,
road.
No.
not on
They will not be working
175th
on
Street.
the project.
Here's my question.
Project
now.
is bid out.
There are about 50 agreements with landowners for no spray or no mow. And I'm wondering what your discussion has been about those agreements so far.
Not a point of information right now. They have a no spray.
It's
They're marked.
still in, we got their resolutions in place, yeah, can't do nothing about, I mean, that's,
Okay.
There's signage out there on the roadways for the no spray.
So
I did nothing with the resolution,
it's an ordinance.
or ordinance, resolution ordinance.
Mhm.
We just haven't funded it. Does that mean the decision?
We don't fund the ordinance resolution, the resolution, that ordinance is just what you can and can't do.
As of
Nothing
right
there
now,
about-
just
Right now,
just
you've
for
frozen the funding.
clarification, that the roadside maintenance department has temporarily had funding suspended.
Right.
It has not been taken away. The ordinance has not been removed, which would take a public hearing in order to remove the ordinance. So
But without funding, it leads to my next question. The upcoming growing season, actually, which is here now. We need a plan for the spraying, the seeding, the brush cutting, chemical orders, mixing of those chemicals. Who is creating that plan? Do you
The
know?
road department's responsibility is that, Shirley.
And who on the road department is filling out the reports on any of that spraying and making sure that they're not overspraying or killing native
Yeah.
species?
We haven't changed that per se, but the county engineer is responsible for that. It's
So
his department that he runs.
how do they order the chemicals for the spot spraying
I think you'd have to ask,
without the expenses?
I think you'd have to ask the county engineer that.
Well,
No, you
if you
guys-
look on the secondary road or roadside management, it's never really showing any expenses for spray.
So they can go ahead and order fuel.
Or out of the weed commissioner's budget. So Doug pays for most of the spray.
So how will they use the spray?
I don't know that. I'm just
They
saying
can't
who
use
pays
that.
for it.
Right now, we've suspended funding for the program. So how do they use the equipment to go do that work if
They
they
can
can't?
still use equipment,
Use equipment.
That costs fuel.
which is always paid out of the secondary road.
So exactly what have you suspended?
Not a lot, obviously.
We're not seeding a lot, are we?
So we're gonna move forward with the roadside program as in place without a director?
We have always had a roadside program.
You're not answering my question. How are you going to proceed with roadside program without somebody directing the roadside program? And
Well,
you
right
can't
now-
use that equipment unless you're doing roadside vegetation management program work.
Right now between Todd and,
Right.
well, that's part of the spraying. Kubota.
Jeff, Kyle and Troy.
Jeff. Between Jeff and Todd, they're taking over the program right now and they've been out removing trees.
So is your plan, I want to get this straight, is your plan to have Todd and Jeff become co-managers of the roadside vegetation management program and we're keeping it?
I don't believe we have it all worked out yet. That's why the plan is still in place for them to continue on right now without incurring any more large expenses to the roadside management program.
So they can continue to buy spray, they can continue to buy fuel.
They don't buy.
They don't
Doug-
buy.
Doug orders the spray. So
That,
that's nothing to do with roadside.
Fuel's ordered by the road department.
but if the roadside is frozen right now, have you checked with the DOT to see if it's okay to use the equipment to use that we got through grants to do the work?
Why wouldn't it be? The plan has never been taken out of operation.
Because the expenses are frozen right now.
So basically, because one of the people, the two people in that, assigned to that. Because one of the two people that were assigned to that program were already a county employee, union. Is it Todd, is it still there?
Todd is
Todd's-
still.
And he was in the union before.
He's in contract.
Yeah. So the only additional staffing was Cory. Correct? So right now,
Todd was hired after Corey. So he was.
Todd was a county employee before Corey,
because he's.
but he worked in the secondary road.
But he moved to that.
He moved
Yeah.
to
But he's still,
roadside management after Corey was hired.
but he's a union employee. anyway.
Yeah.
So basically, at the moment, we just got away with the one person
Correct.
with that. But the question will be to get assistance buying or getting free seed or whatever, all the different benefits of having a roadside vegetation management program. Will not having an actual director compromise that so that we don't get the support from outside entities. And if we don't have that, what's the cost difference then between what we're giving up in support and the cost of having a manager? An actual manager.
To go by what Ben said back in what, 92 or whatever, they had a roadside program, they still got the seed and stuff. Didn't have a manager.
I did a search through the new records database of the old supervisor records, and the county was participating in I don't think it always said integrated, but the Iowa's roadside vegetation management program since the early 90s and was qualifying
With-
for grants.
Registered with the DOT, they have a roadside manager for
No.
that program.
No
I
manager.
think it's two different things.
Yes, manager is different than program.
Right,
Which we still have program.
right. So the reason you have a manager is so that when you are doing the spraying, that manager can identify the correct noxious weeds and the ones that we don't want to spray, the native prairie remnants that are in our roadside right now. That build those deeper roots that are over behind the gentleman in front of the poster over there. That's the whole point of the program, is to create a sponge to absorb. So we don't have the flooding and erosion. Who of these sprayers, Troy, Jeff, Todd, Kyle, and those are the four, who has that education to do that identification?
Well, I'm sure obviously Todd has some of it. He's been working in that department for 5 years.
Have you asked Todd this?
Todd explained to
can-
me that he would be willing to take over for Corey. He says, I may not be as intelligent as Corey was, but I will do my best.
So this begs the question for me then, and this has really been eating at me. Why? What was the whole point of this in the first place then? If you're gonna keep it and you're gonna have Todd move into roadside management, what was the point of this whole thing?
That's
You said you were gonna
never part of
eliminate
my
it.
plan. I didn't have a plan per
Well, the
se.
three of you voted to eliminate it, so you did have a plan on February 6th that had to be rescinded. What was the point of it in the first place? I'm really asking,
The part of it
for that
was to
answer.
save the finances to make the budget.
but you have
We
not
gotta get
proven,
back to getting rid of the weeds. We got.
you have not proven to this community yet, or to your fellow supervisors, where is the cost savings? You haven't shown any numbers yet on cost savings.
Well, if you
No,
were
it's
to
labor's
eliminate the
biggest thing.
program, you would obviously eliminate 2 salaries with benefits.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
Because one is still working.
One is a
I
secondary
said,
road
if you
employee.
were to eliminate the program,
No, he's still a secondary roads crew member.
and he could be moved into a position right now where one of the employees in the secondary road department is leaving.
And we have no retiring in August, don't we?
Where does that get you? Because then you cannot use any of the grant funded equipment we have. You'd have to go buy new equipment.
Most of
There we
the
go.
equipment we've paid over and beyond what the grants were for the equipment.
Have you talked to the DOT about this?
Not the DOT that
It's the DOT's decision.
we have.
We got the
We turn
roads.
it back. We don't use the seed brushes. We don't use the bagger. We don't use the drill,
Sprayers?
the sprayer. We've got
Mounted on the
we have
truck?
7 sprayers up there that we're already pickup mounted sprayers.
That
that we
sprayer
use
that's the
by
backup
individual.
pickup is
That was grant funded.
part of it.
Part of it.
Still grant funded.
We paid 35,000. That should have never been bought to begin with.
That's the
that-
spot
that-
sprayer that
that
goes
high-tech
through
sprayer.
GPS data to use that.
Because,
It's really precise and measurable.
That's the
Spot
gentleman.
sprayer when not used correctly by the past person in charge sprays half a cornfield down the road,
That we bought.
which the
Yeah.
county paid for.
You
That
have that
sprayer
in
should-
proof?
We paid the
Yeah.
insurance policy.
I got the letter from, I
Okay,
also
so
got the letter from
We're
that. farmer.
again sidestepping the question.
No, we're
No,
not.
yes, we are. We're again sidestepping the question.
You don't
Well,
wanna
you
do
guys
that, Susan?
started, I want to have this discussion on fact.
That is
I
bad.
want you guys to answer the question of, one, where are your numbers and savings? Where are your numbers and savings? Two, why was this done in the first place? We had a really good program going, a model Iowa program. And you indiscriminately just came in and said, no, we don't like it. But then you had to rescind that because that wasn't a legal way to do that. So then you froze funding for it, which now I come to find out you're really not freezing funding. We're going to fund it anyway, but call it something different.
We've
I
always
think
done
we're
it.
kind of looking for what skirting away legal issues with the DOT here. We need to be really careful what we do. Have you had the conversations with the
We
DOT?
got seed and equipment before with the roadside program. That's what was back in 92 started. And we were getting equipment and seed, so that ain't gonna change.
The Iowa Roadside Vegetation Management Program with the roadside manager is 4 years ago, 5 years ago, with Corey Meyer as the director. That's how we were able to get some of the grants we have right now to get the
But we
equipment
did-
we were
We
using.
got stuff before that too with the roadside program.
So your plan, what I'm hearing from you right now, is to not eliminate the Iowa Roadside Vegetation Management Program, but instead put Todd Hill in charge of it.
did not say that. I said the roadside. What we were
Somebody
doing
needs to use.
before all this started.
No. It isn't. I'm watching the county supervisor's budget meeting, so.
Yes, you are.
I think I got her. So the question again is, can you provide this county with numbers to show how it's saving the county money to eliminate this program? You've been asked for it about 4 times so far, and we still have yet to see numbers. I want the 3 of you to convince, Mark and I, actually, I want to speak for you. I want the 3 of you to convince me, change my mind. I'm big enough to change my mind when I'm shown the facts. I can do that. Please try. Show me the savings that you're talking about for this county, because we owe everybody in this county an explanation of why we're willing to get rid of a program or shrink a program that makes the county money.
Next on the agenda, it's 10:30. Andy Vandermonden, County Attorney, legal questions regarding agenda and other issues.
What's funny about that?
Well, this could seem pretty tame by comparison.
Yeah.
I have, I had a request from the, judiciary to post some signs in the courthouse by the clerk's office and on the 3rd floor. I'll pass these around. There's, what they're looking at is prohibiting, restricting the, videos, video recording, audio recording, that type of thing in the court related areas. There's a rule to that effect already. I mean, if somebody wants to come in and video record a hearing, trial, that type of thing, they have to get approval from the First Judicial District to come in and have expanded media coverage. We saw that with the Little trial in February, for example. But to come in and just start taking pictures or video recording is not permitted under the Iowa rules. And this is just to alert people to that fact, with cell phones, smartphones, that type of thing. You're seeing more of that type of activity, and posting the signs is a way they hope can restrict that, limit that a little bit. So I don't think this needs your approval, but if there's anyone who has concerns about it, I'm happy to bring.
It doesn't restrict phones from within the courtroom, just not using them.
You, as long as phones are off, but it gets to be a little sensitive when you have a jury in the room and people are having phones out, going to that direction. Those jurors have enough on their plate without being singled out. Sure. And it comes up occasionally, and judges and people are generally very good if they're reminded, put the phone away, you can't take pictures, you can't record. People are generally pretty good about that, but just this gives them a heads up that that's part of the court process.
So are they,
That's only for court-related matters in the court, the public meetings and so forth, it wouldn't apply.
Right, it's just hearings and trials.
Sure.
are
That makes sense.
they asking us to post signage on the 3rd floor?
They will post it.
They will post it. We have a similar issue we used to have before the state law passed on concealed carry. We used to have no firearms in the courthouse. That's been changed. Dan Marks brought to my attention that that hasn't changed for the 3rd floor, and we'll need to post signage that notices that for the 3rd floor.
And I can visit with Judge Parrish if she wants to come up with that signage. I think that there is, as I recall, still a Supreme Court order out there that restricts it in areas used by the court system. And, the scope of that, I think, is going to be up to the chief judge of our district and the local judges. Whether someone is using a concealed weapon to intimidate a witness in the courtroom or in the hallway,
doesn't have a whole lot of difference if that's what the purpose is there for. So I'd leave it up to them to decide where they're drawing the line. But essentially, right now, the third floor is entirely judicial. We have probation officers up there. We have public defender's office, we have the two courtrooms, and we have the judge's chambers and the magistrate chamber. So, you know, that area I would think would be pretty much off limits for concealed carry, but I will convey that question to Judge Parrish and let her follow up with the powers that be.
Because we had to remove, there were still signs posted on the county shops that needed to be removed for that very reason, because the state law changed. It was, we were posted no firearms on the properties, and that's could create a civil complaint.
And that was done, I think, it was supposed to have been done about a year and a half ago. I don't know if it happened.
Not all the buildings.
It hasn't.
Yeah.
So as long as they're followed up on, I think, security committee made that recommendation for supervisors to approve the removal of those signs.
Yeah, that's,
So
it
they
just
should
hasn't
not.
been done.
And there is a security committee meeting scheduled here in a couple of weeks, so you can,
First of June, and
yeah, in a month, and yeah, you can visit about those and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Okay.
Anything else?
Opioid litigation, is that it?
Thanks for reminding me. So can you put on next Monday's agenda that we talk about there's an upcoming forum for people who are interested in providing services that meet the requirements of the opioid settlement. Not geared entirely toward us, but toward those groups who might have an interest in presenting an idea or trying to get some funding. I will try to put together a resolution to float around to you and to have available for next week, Monday, to talk about the prospect of a grant potentially being issued in early September. And that this program is out there, the summit for people to attend if they want ideas on how to formulate a use for that money. And that I think would at least not only educate the public to the summit, but also start building the framework for how we're going to distribute those funds or analyze the applications for it.
And that is in Des Moines on the 24th and 25th of May.
Thank you.
And I did mention at my board meeting at Behavioral Health the other night that they should be contacting you if they have any questions about it.
I just have a quick question on the upcoming public hearing. When it comes to public comment, that public comment should be directed solely to the budget as a whole. Or,
And I think they need to be budget related issues, yes. And that's what.
Budget related.
right, so. And I know it's gonna come up, so this is why I'm gonna ask, with the roadside management program, part of the secondary road fund is getting as much as we can give to it and possible in the budget. So is there really any question about roadside management program part of the budget, as that all the money is that we can possibly direct is already being directed to the secondary road fund?
I think the allocation of those funds within that are certainly a topic that can be discussed and the public's entitled.
Okay.
Right now.
Just wanted to clarify.
You know, maybe it's a lead question. The difference between roadside management and back in. And now
The
we have,
mid-90s.
yes, and now we have a roadside vegetation management program. Do you know the legal difference between that?
There were some changes, as I recall, in this legislative history that it changed some of the requirements that counties were to comply with, and I think somewhere in there it became the vegetation management. Also, the ordinance that the county adopted uses that term as well.
vegetation management.
Right.
Does that require having a designated manager to be part of that team?
Without looking at the ordinance again, I haven't looked at it recently.
That's something you could look at.
It might be good for the board to know if it's required under the ordinance or under the state's requirements. So could they still have a program without a
Designated
manager, designated manager? Because I think that's going to come up. Yeah.
And that might help you a little bit. I think I can point one thing, Andy, there's a part of, 21421 that says a city or county which has a project which qualifies for the use of these funds shall submit a request for the funds to the State Department of Transportation. That goes on with some other provisions. I hadn't taken the time today, but I suspect there may be something in here. If there's a requirement to have a manager, legal requirement, it's probably in one of these two code sections that I cite in the paper. And I was trying to skim it now and I haven't found it yet, but I thought that we had requirements that I am not sure about. You know,
I'll go back, I'll take a look at this and the ordinance, because I think the ordinance might be more detailed
Sure,
in the code.
appreciate that. Thank you, Andy.
Which might mean like changing our ordinance and name if we're gonna change.
Name probably isn't as material as, depending on what happens to the program moving forward from July 1 on, you may need to modify your ordinance. Whether, if the program isn't implemented in the fashion it has been in the past, that ordinance is going to need to be amended at some point.
And any change to that ordinance will need a public hearing.
Correct.
Yes.
Ken had sent me one other item, and that was on some properties, some lots in the city of Spillville. And the question was whether those lots could be sold subject to an easement for the city if they ever chose to put in a trail of some sort. I think that would involve a two-step process. First, you would need to have a public hearing on granting the easement while you still own those lots. The second step would be a public hearing to sell lots, and when lots are sold, if the easement that's on it and goes with it, if the easement wasn't granted, after the first hearing, lots get sold without that encumbrance.
It's my understanding that there's already an easement on those, because I was told there was a sewer manhole or stormwater manhole that exists on that property.
My understanding is there's talk about a pedestrian easement and something broader than that. I don't know I don't get an abstract on these. I don't know if there is or isn't something running across it, but that easement will be different. My understanding is that the city has some interest in potentially putting a trail through there. The easement for the water and sewer would be different than easement for the trail. Use is different.
Okay.
So your easement needs to line up with the use.
And so what I'm hearing is that they couldn't sell them with the restriction to grant an easement in the future. They would have to grant the easement and then sell them with an existing easement.
I think that's the better approach, yes.
Clean and white.
And then one other thought I had, I didn't, to see if there were any DOT regulations relating to the integrated strategy program.
Yeah, I think there are. So I'll take a look at the regs.
Yeah,
Also,
I didn't have access to any, and I didn't even think about it until this time.
Great. I know you are pressed for the hearing coming up here in a few minutes. If I can find an answer to Mark's question, I'll email that to all of you. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Right, thank you, Andy.
I know this, you get it from me.
Really.
You guys, okay.
Next on the agenda, 10:45, Jim Beeghly, discussion of roadside management program and previous questions.
I'll try to speak loud enough to reach everybody. If you don't, like, let me know. Good morning. I appreciate the chance. You've seen me quite a few times and you've been patient with me. I appreciate that. First of all, I'd like to make a public apology to the supervisor, Mark Beck. At last week's board meeting, I read an email from Corey Meyer to me, wherein Corey stated that Mr. Vick walked out of an advisory committee meeting before it was over. After the board meeting, I was informed by Shirley Vermace that Mr. Vick did not walk out during Corey's presentation, but did not stay for discussion. It may be that Corey considered discussion to be part of the meeting. Regardless, Mr. Vick stayed until the presentation was over. And do I have that right? Okay,
Well, you can ask Mark too.
okay, and,
Yeah, the meeting is over, so I left.
yeah, right.
The presentation.
Well,
And so did other people too. So,
Okay. Well, my apology, Mr. Vick.
thank you, no problem. So,
All right, now to the subject I'm scheduled for, whether the Winneshiek County Integrated Roadside Vegetation Program should be continued. For those who don't know, what is an integrated roadside vegetation management? Where does the idea come from? The idea of using native plants in roadside management came to the attention of the Iowa legislature from at least three sources: the Iowa Department of Transportation, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, and the University of Northern Iowa biology professor, Dr. Darrell Smith. The biology department at UNI and others formed an organization now called the Tallgrass Prairie Center. The center, established in 1988, has developed a program to integrate native plant communities into the management of Iowa roadsides. The idea caught on across the state, and counties, being responsible for maintenance of secondary roads, began applying management practices using native plants. Native plants are deep-rooted, long-lived, and well adapted to the soils, climate, and other features of Iowa. Eventually, after much research and experimenting with support from the Iowa Department of Transportation and the Department of Natural Resources, the Iowa legislature incorporated the ideas and practices of integrated roadside management into Iowa law. Now, I'll be referring to two parts of the chapter 314 that Andy and I briefly discussed earlier. And I've got copies of those statutes in the paper I handed out this morning. Section 314.22 directs the Iowa Department of Transportation to provide an integrated roadside vegetation management plan designed to accomplish the goals set out in that section. The goals are listed there, as are the objectives. I encourage you to read the highlighted parts of code sections 314.21 and 22, because they provide guidance to counties in designing their own integrated vegetation program. Importantly, section 22 provides that counties may adopt such a plan. So that section requires the state roads to have the integrated roadside program. They're required to do it. And then secondary roads, it's been optional, at least the way I read it. In 2015 and 16, the Winneshiek County adopted resolutions to establish an integrated roadside vegetation program, hire a manager, establish duties of the manager, and implement the program. Winneshiek County Integrated Roadside Vegetation Management Plan was adopted March 28, 2016. It incorporates the job description of a full-time roadside manager. On April 1st, 2019, Winneshiek County, by ordinance, established regulations regarding right-of-way maintenance on Winneshiek County secondary roads. In doing so, it adopted Iowa Code Section 314.22, and then a subpart of that is a 2, making the county's plan consistent with the Integrated Roadside Vegetation Management Plan adopted by the Department of Transportation. So the objectives and goals set out in Iowa Code Section 314.22 apply to the Winneshiek County plan. I think it'd be a misnomer to say the county has an integrated roadside vegetation plan if it doesn't meet the specific. So maybe labels, there could be issues over that, but I'll leave it to Andy Vandermont to, advise you on that issue. Corey Meyer was hired to manage the Winneshiek program, and from all reports from people in the best position to judge his work, well informed with great knowledge and understanding of his work. He has the skills and knowledge to be not just a typical roadside manager. He is respected throughout Iowa and beyond. He developed several seed plots containing plants that were specialized for varying conditions of soils in Winneshiek County. There are 3 different, as I understand it, and I just tried to look it up, and I think there are 3 different plots having different seed mixes, and so he could tailor that to certain areas. I know these limestone ditches we have sometimes wouldn't be the same as other highly organic ditches. So anyway, he develops these plans. He has people, Corey has people skills, work ethic, organizational skills, mechanical skills, and takes great pride in the work that he's done for Winneshiek County. He was building a roadside program many have described as in the top 10 in the state of Iowa. I don't want to overlook Todd Hill, Assistant Roadside Manager for Winneshiek County, who contributed greatly to this program. From what I hear, Todd and Corey were a great team. Corey says, quote, "We worked our butts off to create a program that was arguably one of the top 10 in the state of Iowa." Then on February 6, 23, about 2.5 months ago, at a regular meeting of the Winneshiek County Board of Supervisors, Corey met with the board to give a program update. To his surprise, minutes of the meeting reflect, quote, "Moved by Vic, seconded by Kelsey to terminate the roadside management program due to funding concerns, effective immediately." Motion carried with Vic, Kelsey, and Langrick voting aye, Vermace and Follett voting nay. At the next board meeting, County Attorney Andy Vandermont expressed concern about the action taken at the last meeting and suggested corrective action. Then it was moved by Vic, seconded by Kelsey, to rescind the action taken on February 6th. Motion carried. Then it was moved by Vic, seconded by Kelsey, to direct the county engineer to suspend incurring any expenses other than wages and benefits for the roadside management program, except as required by law, until receiving further notice from the Board of Supervisors following the budget hearing. That would be today's budget hearing. The motion passed with affirmative votes from Vic, Kelsey, and Langer. In a letter to the Board of Supervisors dated February 27, 2003, Winneshiek County Engineer Lee Bjerke told the board the roadside program was accomplishing the goals previous boards had set to achieve, and, quote, "is showing budgetary gains already," close quote. The county engineer and roadside manager for Pottawatomie County, Iowa, in a letter to Winneshiek County, expressed that their integrated roadside management program provides, quote, a higher quality solution at a lower cost, since much of our equipment and seed costs are covered by grants. County engineer provided data showing significant overall savings since adoption of the program. Roadside biologist for Dallas County, Iowa, wrote a 2-page letter providing detailed benefits to their county, including how early detection and control of invasive species saves his county money. He explains how having many eyes on the roadside detects erosion and other potential problems and saves costs. Fayette County engineer Joel Fance expressed similar benefits and notes the advantage of having roadside work, quote, in-house, keep the taxpayers' money in the county. He estimates that the county's cost for in-house roadside management is 1/2 the cost of having it done by contractors. The packet of information provided to you today has copies of the engineers and roadside managers' reports and the letters, including the report of Lee Bjerke, Winneshiek County engineer. Winneshiek County Integrated Roadside Vegetation Management Program has been criticized as taking money away from gravel and using it to plant flowers in the ditches. This type of statement is uninformed, to say the least. A major part, if not most funds for the Integrated Vegetation Program come from other sources, not the county. The sources including the Living Roadway Trust Fund that was created in the same chapter, I might point out, to incentivize counties to start and maintain the vegetation program. The last page of the packet I provided to you is a spreadsheet showing a partial list of equipment. It shows that most of the purchase price came from grants. Most of the purchased seed is free, either from the Living Roadway Trust Fund or other groups, or raised in seed plots that were started by Corey Meyer. And as expected, Winneshiek County itself provides significant dollars to the program. As to Winneshiek County's costs, that should be viewed as an investment, not an expense. Native plant communities are not an annual crop that has to be reseeded every year. Native plant communities are meant to be here. They're self-sustaining. They're not only as native plants, but also insect communities, including pollinators necessary for farm crops, for birds and the entire communities of plants and animals. Native plant communities will serve residents of Winneshiek County indefinitely into the future. It's an investment we can't afford to lose. To the Board of Supervisors, I request that you budget for the roadside program for the coming year the same amount as last year, with the expectation of hiring a roadside manager as soon as possible. Number 2, to you in the audience, after the budget hearing, I plan to stay around. If any of you are interested, I have pictures of much of the equipment and facilities of the Winneshiek County roadside. I also have a spreadsheet that itemizes most of the equipment and shows the source of funding to acquire it. Please read and circulate the packet of materials. It doesn't matter whether the recipient of those materials is supportive or opposes the roadside program. It is important that everyone will benefit from having background information. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Jim.
Thank you.
Some extra one, did everyone here get one?
I got one.
Okay, I think you got one extra.
Thank
You did not.
I know. Next on the agenda, 11 o'clock, public hearing FY 24 budget. entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I motion to open public hearing. Second.
We have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. First of all, budget and certification of tax rates adoption.
So before that, we go up to the public hearing section. I have some handouts. May I take it for a minute? Okay,
Go ahead.
I have some handouts. Did you guys have these? Did I email it out?
Yep.
Let me just hand you guys some. I have more handouts here. I'll pass around. I don't know how many.
Are they available online?
They are. Everything that I'm passing out is available online. I will say that, what I have online, if you go to the auditor's page, is more complete than what I have here. This is a summary. It's a much shorter summary. I was asked to give basically a presentation on what the process is, so people kind of know how it works. And I'll kind of go through that. Anybody who attended any of the meetings, basically from Thanksgiving until mid-January, knows that the board did a lot of budget work in that time. They basically receive information from two sources. They have outside entities that request funds, and then they have the county departments that go through their budget. Just so you know, if you take the county's full budget line by line, there's about 120 pages of expenses and 50 pages of revenues. That gets condensed to about 15 pages for the Department of Management, where we combine all expenses into much simpler lines. And then that's further condensed into the one-page budget summary that's at the front page of this paper. So this doesn't look very detailed. That's because it's not, but there it's many, many pages otherwise.
But all of those pages and details are online.
Yeah. I don't know if the 120 page one is online, but we could make that online if you wanted.
Or they could stop in your office.
Yes.
West.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's 88 pages.
So you can see on here, the other part of this is not only the requested money and then department's expenses and revenues. The other part is the valuations of the county property and the taxable value. That's usually where we start then, and that's the very back page. So I'm going to kind of work from the back of your pamphlet to the front. The back shows the county valuations and taxable valuations and history of that and the growth over a few years. This is the report that changed. So the legislature changed the calculation of what is commonly called the rollback. It's the assessment limitation. It's how much of your assessed value is actually taxable. They changed that in mid-January. And so this chart is different now than it was when we were first starting the budget. And so that was part of the reason there were some changes that needed to be made. And it's also the reason why we're doing this hearing a month later than we usually do. So the board compiles the requests from outside entities, which is the second from the last there, the front of that back page. They compile those requests from the entities. They take the budgets from all of the departments, and then they take their taxable value, which was that back page, and do what we call a run, a trial budget, the first draft or whatever, however you want to call it. Usually with the first run, we use the same levy rate as the previous year. So what can we fund without raising property tax values? So that's usually the first run. And then from there, we make additional runs as we make additional changes. We took 3 runs this year. They did an assortment of asking for cuts from some departments, and voluntary cuts, asking some departments to make cuts even if they didn't volunteer them, and raising the levy rate of what ended up being 10 cents per thousand. So that was the combination of things they did to get to where they want to be. Where do they want to be? That would be the next page forward. Shows the third run. The board taxes 3 different levy rates. They tax the general basic fund, the general supplemental fund, and the rural fund. The supplemental and the rural fund are both restricted use tax levies. They have only certain things that they can pay for. General supplemental is very restricted. That comes down to mostly insurance and payroll expenses that aren't actually payroll, like health insurance and IPERS and FICA and those kinds of Social Security tax. Emergency management comes out of there, the operation of the court system. I could go into the whole list of what, but it's very explicitly restricted to only certain things that can be used in the general supplemental. The rural fund is a little more open. It can be used for providing services that are utilized by primarily rural residents. So most of our expenses in the rural fund are like county zoning or the county sanitarian or some of those things that county people that provide services to the rural residents. Zoning, for example, if you live in a city, you have a city zoning code and policy and goes through your city expenses. You can see on the rural services fund transfers out. There's 2.7 million almost there. This is in the column right in here. That's the amount, the legal maximum that the board can transfer from the rural fund to the road fund. The road fund does not tax its own money. It only gets money out of these 3 taxing funds. That's the legal maximum that they can tax, and you can see that makes up about 65% of the rural expenses for the year is just the transfer to the road fund. So that leaves the general basic fund. That one is the one where you have the most versatility. Basically, it can be used for any lawful purpose that the county wants to use. And that's the one that we try to target a 25% carryover balance. The reason for having a 25% carryover balance is our expenses start July 1st, but the first round of property taxes payments aren't due till September 30th. So the county has to have enough money to make it at least 3 months before we have half of our year's revenue and property tax revenue. So that's why we target 25%. So when the board is putting together their budget, they take those expenses and revenues provided by the departments, they take those requests from outside organizations and put that all in with the levy rate. And then that's where they're trying to come up with a number to get those to hit for the general fund to hit about 25%. And the supplemental and the rural services fund, since they're so restricted and since we have very specific things we want to, or we need to pay, we target dollar amounts usually for those. That's more like having $1 million in supplemental and $2 million in rural, just in case of emergencies. We already know what those, most of those expenses are going to be. General, we have more flexibility, but we also want to hit that 25% as close as we can. So when the board is trying to balance their budget, they're really looking at cutting expenses, increasing revenue if there's a way to do that. There isn't usually much that way, or increasing tax rates to get that to 25%. Then the front page and back and front of the first page is basically the summarized version of the budget. So the very front page goes through broad categories of revenues and expenses. And the back of that page goes through those levy rates and how they generate taxes. And so, I mentioned the transfer from the rural fund. You can also see that there is a transfer in the general fund of $237,589 that also goes to the road fund, and that is the legal maximum that can be transferred from that fund also. So like was mentioned earlier, the road fund is funded as fully as the board can fund it. And so any changes in the road fund have to be shifts between programs, that you can't increase the total in any way because you don't have any more money there. You've already put the maximum legal amount in there. I guess that was kind of the spiel I'm gonna go through to kind of explain how the steps work and how it all ends up, and I'll leave it at that then.
You may want to explain like 21, 22, why there's a $3 million, that'd be that, I mean, just to get.
Yeah.
if
Yeah, so
somebody
you can
wants
see-
to know.
Yeah, and if you look at the page, front of the second paper, which is page 3, if you look back at some of our revenues, you can see both in the current fiscal year and the previous fiscal year, much higher revenues. That was, we talked earlier about the American Rescue Plan Act. That was kind of a additional funding, and there were some other COVID-related grants in that 2 years ago column. So it isn't that we've really decreased our miscellaneous receipts by any choice. It's just that we actually had a little bump there for a couple of years that made them higher than usual.
And this year, by some of the new laws, we've been restricted on what we're able to generate as income.
So going forward, the EMS, if that passes, will,
So
our
there's,
spending will go out of the supplemental.
Yeah. so there's a bill in the legislature for emergency management, which would be in our county is Sean Snyder is our director, and then he also runs the dispatch center for 911. So all of those expenses go through his budget and come out of the county's general supplemental fund. So if that bill passes, they will have their own levying authority. But as I explained earlier, that'll make the county's budget look lower, but they're gonna have their own. So in the end, if they spend the same amount of money as a taxpayer, you won't be affected.
There'll just be a line item on
It'll be
the property tax,
separate.
just like the assessor.
Yep.
Now, going forward, I think it passed that we'll be restricted on the amount we can, the taxable values are restricted, how much they can raise.
Yeah, but
And then,
there'll be a maximum of.
and then the
percentage.
levy restriction on how much we can raise the levy.
Yep. So the House and the Senate both passed property tax reform bills, but they are so different that I don't know how they will compromise them. So it could be that they can't come to a compromise, so nothing will happen the next time. Or they could come to a compromise at some place, and I don't know how it'll work out. But both bills include some restrictions in growth by the county. How those restrictions are accomplished are different between the state house and state senate bills. So I can't really guess how it might end up playing out. I think take it up a step, the goal is that the state legislature, the current state legislature, doesn't like the use of property taxes to fund many of these programs because of the what they see as not being fair. And so they want to restrict counties' ability to property tax for programs. My comment when I've been asked by legislators is that you then should help us find other revenue sources, because just telling us we can't have money doesn't help us continue programs we need to do. So maybe replace those revenue sources in other ways. We'll see what comes of all that.
And to be honest, we could have probably got by with 4.43 on the general. And we wouldn't have had the 24.9% to hit that almost 25. We would have been around the 23, which probably would have been safe. But by not taking that additional 5 cents, and not knowing what
Yeah.
the laws are gonna be
One
next
of,
year.
yep, one of the bills in the legislature sets this budget as the base year, and so then restricts future tax rates on this year's budget. So the higher you have this one as the base year, the more flexibility you have going into the future. And so the board, you know, rather than cut it as slim as they could, decided to go ahead and add the 10 cents just so they have a little more flexibility in future years.
But doesn't a big part of that been there because we want to make sure we can pay our bills between July and September?
that-
because
That's
we
the
don't have the
25,
budget.
Yeah. But the uncertainty of not knowing what's gonna happen
Yeah,
really generated most of that. So. I guess next we have public comment. And I'd like to limit you guys' comments to a couple minutes so everybody has a fair chance to speak. Go ahead.
Like a couple of minutes.
Since Jim Beeghly did such an excellent job of summarizing everything, I am speaking to the, the Integrated Roadside Vegetation Management Program from a budgetary point of view. All of the actual data that I have heard so far substantiates that it is a saving to our county, not a great expense. But I want people to see this exhibit, and I need some people that are tall to hold this up. Unless you actually see the real thing, this is, boy, he's almost not big enough.
Oh, well, I better sit down.
This is
Stretch.
This is Big Blue Stem and Compass Plant. Merely two of the plants that we have doing work for us in this county in the vegetation management program. Thank you very much. I think you can relax now, and now that everybody has seen this. And these plants, and you also see some over there against the wall, if you had X-ray vision, you could see this entire community under the surface of the ground. These provide countless services to our roadsides. This is what I call the muscle crew. That's what we've been talking about. That's okay. What we've been talking about for the past weeks. And I invite you to think about them as perennial employees, ready, willing, and eminently qualified to work 24/7 for us. And what natural services do they offer? Here's the short list, just a repetition. Erosion prevention, soil enrichment, water absorption and purification, invasive weed reduction, read less chemicals, carbon sequestration, habitat regeneration, wildlife food resources, pollination security, that's security for farmers too. And last but not least, rugged beauty of a naturally diverse environment. These benefits are gifts too great to be quantified with a few dollars and cents. They are too valuable. But what do they cost us? Darn little, and less every year that we employ them and further them. When we grant these employees a little ground, we need to install them only once. And all they ask is a sprinkle of rain and an occasional haircut. And maybe every 5 years a good burn. Aside from that, they go to work to build a community that has adapted to this environment over 10,000 years. And they don't need any training or coddling, just a fair chance. I'm a nurse. I care about health. And I know that prevention is far less expensive than treatments and cures, if indeed there are cures. Iowa is second in cancer rates. Aren't we proud? Second in the nation. Get that, people. Breast, lung, bowel, and yes, prostate. And the only state where the cancer rates are increasing. Do we need more dead and monocultural ground? Native prairie plants are our partners. a gift of the Creator to help us steward this land for perpetuity. We are foolish if we do not fully employ their independent and reliable workforce to keep our county a healthy place to live. We have just celebrated in this community Earth Day. But what do words mean if we do not follow through with significant and ongoing actions that protect our commons? Iowa, our home, has only 1.7% public land. That's our commons. And 60% of that is in our roadsides. I ask you to continue our IRVM program, to fully fund it, and to hire a new manager. In closing, I quote the words of Chief Seattle. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. And all we have to do is look at those roots and those roots over there to see how we can connect more health for our community. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
One for and one against.
What?
If you have multiple views, you need to hear one for and one against.
I'm Kevin Lee from Freeport, and my concern is about flooding and the safety of any future flooding events, which are certainly going to happen. And I think that tall grass prairie lands, wetlands restoration really have a bearing on flooding. Prairie lands by its time, when restored, prairie holds water. It slows water traveling downstream. In catastrophic flooding events, this time is essential. It's a time that we need for water to drain, for the sun to come out, and the flood-prone residential and commercial areas to recover. Even if waters are only held back for a day or two, this makes an enormous difference. The EPA estimates that 1 wetland acre can store between 1 and 1.5 million gallons of water. A recent study by Harris County Flood Control District noted that it appears that 1 acre of prairie would increase the infiltration capacity of undeveloped land by 3.52 inches in a 100-year flood event. The restoration of tall grass prairies increases the amount of organic matter, which lead us to deep root systems with increased water holding capacity and increased soil porosity. The Natural Resource Defense Council estimates every 1% increase in soil organic matter results in a soil holding an additional 20,000 gallons of water per acre. I like to note that these lands soak, store, slow water, all of which increase flooding for residential residents downstream. A request that I would have with the budget is that if at all possible, either through the integrated roadside vegetation program or through just straight through the county's roadside program, that they accelerate the use of perennials and such types that Julie had shown you in the ditches to slow down all of this flooding, so we don't have as bad an event again in Freeport, which cost the county millions and millions. And even if you got subsidy for that money, it still cost the county millions and millions, which is way beyond what a cost of a integrated roadside prairie program would be. One source of that is the Pioneer Cemetery areas in the county. There are a few of those that are being maintained to an inch of its life. And there's open areas that would be great to be planting, the native prairie plants, and be harvested by the county. I think that there's a big cost savings if the county can grow their own stock of native plants and put them in the ditches at high densities.
You
So
want
that
to
we,
start wrapping it up?
okay, well, anyway, I guess you understand what I'm saying. Thank you.
All right.
You've heard the applause, so people can talk.
Sure.
You, my name is Chris Erickson. I live in Decorah. And I'm a friend who was an HR person. And she reminded me that perception is reality. I'm going to give you my perception. Somehow, and we've all heard this, we know all about prairie plants. We know all about the benefits. We know all about the budget, but we don't. Because somehow you, Mr. Langbrick, and you, Mr. Vick, voted IRBM is fabulous. Then the election comes on. Then all of a sudden, Mr. Kelsey is here. So you're going to say what? We're in the middle of a fiscal year.
Excuse me, but I don't ever believed I said that it was fabulous. And when the plan came out, I asked if it could be changed within the 5 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, because when you look at the minutes, it doesn't say anything about discussion. It doesn't tell you really a whole lot, just what motions
Because the
here.
minutes have action.
Sure, all right, well, beg your pardon.
Okay.
But you did vote for it. So if the savings was half a year's salary for the program manager, what did you accomplish in that budget? What did you say? Do you know?
Well, at 1 year's salary, just for the manager, you're almost to half of a new truck, snowplow.
But we need that anyway. We have to have all those equipment. We have to have the workers.
Yeah, we have to have the equipment, but we ain't got no money to buy it.
But you have equipment.
You wanna know what it's, we need.
That's for a different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
different discussion.
Yep, don't
But
wanna get into that.
in determining,
Wanna talk money.
the budget, I'm a taxpayer. I have lost trust. Because I don't get numbers, my perception is that there's a difficulty, you remember on a report card when you were a kid, at the bottom it says, plays well with others.
That's in myself.
That might affect your grade. I would actually just ask you to try to work together, try to be more transparent so that those of us who don't know what's going on until there's some brouhaha can follow along and know what's going on, because I think you all want the best for the county.
Yes,
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead. Oh,
Okay, so just.
Kevin Sand, lifelong resident.
You probably need to come up here, the people won't be able to hear.
That way
you behind.
the microphone here can pick you up.
I'm Kevin Sand, a lifelong resident of the county, and have been following this issue on in the news and such. And I am very concerned. My personal knowledge of Corey came about when we got a new asphalt road, a nice road in front of our
house, and I had asked him if we could get some prairie plants replaced rather than just grass, and he said, sure. And so they came and sprayed in prairie plants along the ditch, and that came up, and it's been just really wonderful for us. I've burned it once in the last 4 years. We have no trees coming up in there. And from my years of being a physician in the area, I know that you need to see if you're driving down the road, and the county very carefully mows about 3-4 feet into that. And you need to have no hard stops. Hard stops kill people. Not seeing kills people too, because the deer jumps out and your impulse is to turn suddenly to the side. And the other thing is, I don't want to repeat the previous comments because they're much better than what I could say. But I read through Lee Bjerke's notes about roadside management, and I would say that he comes out as very strongly for the present program. It's very complicated. I would not begin to have any background to be able to do what Lee has to oversee and what Terry knows to make this happen. But we live in a rapidly changing world with much more rains, droughts, that sort of thing. And the prairie is used to that. 10,000 years it's been working at taking care of itself. And if you light a fire, your trees coming in are dead, and we're going to have a much safer, much better environment for both people and the environment. So I strongly recommend that I'd like to see the numbers, the transparency about if you want to change this program, then get that information out there for us to take a look at. But I would strongly recommend that we get a roadside manager, very capable roadside manager as Corey was. I was crushed when I read he left.
Name's Thomas Hanson. I live up along Locust Road, and I'm going to give you my perception. No matter what a county's economic base is, its lifeblood depends on the condition of our roads and our bridges. And here in Winneshiek County, we have some very unique circumstances and extra costs because of our topography, our county above and beyond what other counties have. Now, if you talk to somebody who's engaged in commerce here in this county and uses our infrastructure a lot, every single one of them has a story about the worst section of road in the county or the worst bridge that needs to be replaced right away. Conversely, if you talk to somebody that's visiting this county, and we talked to a lot of visitors down to Club 45, they talk about the beauty of our bluffs and our rivers and our trails and our campgrounds. But we have never had a single person talk to us about the beauty of our roadside ditches. Not one. Now, if you're concerned about erosion and you're concerned about water quality, take a shovel and go try to dig in the bottom of one of those ditches. Because there is 50 years plus of rock and gravel in the bottom of those ditches. That's just the natural thing that occurs from plowing the snow off the roads. And I see the county doing far more work clearing our ditches than I do repairing them. Our ditches are solid. Now, this leads me all to believe that everything that's been going on here for the last few months is all political. Because we have a board of supervisors that understands the proper role of government. And that is to provide the necessities to maintain a civil society, to be fiscally responsible and to be a guardian of taxpayers' dollars. Right? My personal opinion is that a lot of this anger is all about that our county board of supervisors will not engage in legal plunder of the taxpayers of this county and of this state to put forth this false ideology that government is our master, that if government doesn't do the job for us, it will not get done. And will not get done properly because we are too stupid and we really don't care.
That's not budget.
I didn't help
We're not getting into
Don't interrupt me.
public discussion here. You have a couple more, well,
Yeah.
get to wrapping it
How
up.
long do we have to listen to this?
Yeah.
Time's up.
We're listening. Excuse me, we're listening to everybody. I'm asking him to wrap it up quickly.
Thank you. I believe our previous speakers got at least 4 minutes.
You're close.
No, I have not.
You're close.
Yeah.
If they don't wrap it up,
Have to end the hearing if they don't want to be quiet.
No, there's still time to listen.
okay, summarize.
Can I continue, please? Thank you. I don't remember where I left off. So, on the contrary, I'm talking about taking care of the ditches. If you drive around this county, you will see miles of ditches taken care of by the landowner. You'll see people like my former neighbors, Tom and Jean Murray, who bundled up during the summer and went out and pulled the wild parsnips out of the ditches. Now my wife that goes out there with machete and cuts the thistles out of the ditch so milkweed isn't sprayed or mowed. And then she spreads wildflower seed so the birds have food. I myself have gone along the guardrail, that steep guardrail in front of my house with a chainsaw and with a weed eater and cut the brush away. So I have a suggestion for all of you who say you deeply care about the beauty of our ditches. It's something that's near and dear to your heart. Form yourselves in off the section of the county roadway and then go out there and sacrifice your own time. Put your money where your mouth is and take care of that ditch the way you want to see it taken care of, like the rest of us do, who truly care about making this world a better place.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good idea. Excuse me. I got one more challenge for this board also. Yeah, it's funny how you let one of your people go on to speak forever.
Just
but
real
somebody
quick.
You don't agree on.
Hey.
You want to shut me up. This is typical of what you do.
This is,
I got a challenge to the board. Continue down this road of rendering the lard from this budget and use it to grease the machine to take care of the necessities of this county. And when you're done with that, start cutting our taxes.
thank you for your response.
Good, Paul.
All right. Anyone else?
Thank you and good morning. My name is Mary Huffman. I live out in Bluffton. I actually would like to see the roadside management program continue because I don't think it's about what's in the bottom of the ditch, because I think it's about the sides and the ditches so they don't all collapse. And of course, there's a reason why I think that, judging by what I've driven on for the last 40 years. Okay, I actually wanted to offer a suggestion about budgeting in general, because this seems to be a hard thing to do. And I think that if you take the old budget and color it, which is, that's a cost of living adjustment, and use something steady that you can find every year, that federal number is available before you guys have to actually budget every year, so that you have that, and increase everything from the previous year by that amount. And then look and see what's coming in, whether you're long or short, and then either increase or decrease from there over the whole thing. That way, everybody thinks you're fair because it's over the entire budget. This provides consistency, and it would leave people not feeling alienated by trying to get rid of entire programs. And it's would preserve things that the supervisors have worked hard for, past supervisor boards have worked hard for. They've studied them and implemented things that they thought would be good for the county going forward.
So that is what I have to say. And I really wish that everybody was individually minded. I still have a hard time hearing your county attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other public comment? Is there any public comment from anyone online?
There are no hands up that I can see.
No further comment. I move to close the public hearing.
Oh, there's one more.
Oh, excuse that.
It's just a quick question.
Sure.
Can I ask what is in the budget now for the roadside management program? Could you please tell me? Thank you.
Basically, right now, the funding for the roadside maintenance department has been stopped, except for wages and the necessities that have to be paid out of it. But with that, as Ben stated, there's as much money and everything out of that department is paid out of the secondary road fund. The secondary road fund is receiving every dime that we can put forth to it. So the monies are technically in that secondary road fund. It's just how they are going to be dispersed.
Can you explain that? Have you decided as supervisors how they will be dispersed?
We have not at this point in time, and most of the disbursement of them funds is decided by the county engineer with our help on large purchases, things like that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
You want to double check to make sure there's one? Because we only had one opposed and the rest were for. Is there any other
No one
issues?
is raising your hand.
Second.
Arnold?
Take one quick public comment. First of all,
Your name, please?
Arnold Creamer.
Arnold, what?
Crater.
We have quite a bit of land in Winneshiek, Chickasaw, and Howard. First of all, I want to say to everybody in the room, registered independent. Okay, I hear the emotion in the room. First of all, I just spent the last 3 weeks in Australia. And I always like to check back on the local news. Boy, the rhetoric in the editorials. Wow. That's supervisors want to kill us, this or that. They're doing a budget. I've been on boards. You get about 5 or 6 tough decisions to make a year. If they were cutting something else, and Corey's a good friend. So, but if they were cutting some other department, there'd be another set of people here. So let's look for solutions. Maybe when you clean ditches, bare dirt, throw some wildflower seeds down. There's solutions out there. But calm the rhetoric. We're all in it together. So that's about all I got.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arnie.
Thank you.
Just curious, since the assumption is we're cutting things, I just curious to know, is it true that you're raising the tax rate by 10 cents thousand? So how much would that be on $1 million property that you're increasing taxes this year?
$1 million taxable value or $1 million assessed value? Okay, so 10 cents per thousand, so you'd be at millions, so $10,000.
$100. We're talking $100.
$100.
$1 million.
$1 million.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just the.
I'm challenging the whole notion that we need to cut. Because that was the assumption last presentation. And one.
All right.
And can I say anything? Can I say anything?
After you've posted the public
Okay.
hearing, you'll have your discussion
Yeah.
for as long as you need.
In your name?
Neil Shealy, sorry. I live in DeForest.
Have your comments for our discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table.
Sorry.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next up, we have the adoption of budget and certification of tax rates.
So I guess you would move, make a motion to adopt it as it was published, or if you want to make other cuts, you can do that. You can't increase rates at this point. You can only decrease. But once you make that a motion, then that opens up for you to discuss as a board as much as you want.
I would recommend that we adopt it as published.
Was that your?
I'd move,
I'm not making, I just said it's a recommendation.
I'd move to make the adoption of the budget as published, certification of the tax rates.
I second it.
We have a motion and second to adopt the budget and certification of tax rates as published. Is there any further discussion?
In the discussion, I want to just mention that this current budget includes the, basically the same amount that was in last year's secondary roads budget. And there is available money in our roads tax, the rural fund, the rural fund, that we wouldn't have to fund a roadside manager out of the roads budget. It could be funded through the rural fund with extra money. So just think about that going forward as a group.
No, that's equipment.
We've given everything we can to equipment
No,
out of that.
She's saying that instead of paying for them, I mean, you'd buy equipment out of the rural fund, that you could pay for the manager out of the rural fund instead of making him a road department employee.
Right.
That's a good idea. But we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor,
So
say
you
aye.
could have more discussion amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with this budget.
Yep.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Can I have roll call? Because
Oh,
it's
sure.
resolution.
Early.
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I also. Motion carries unanimously. Next,
But it technically adoption of the budget that you're going to. I have to sign 2 copies.
next up, we have action on compensation board recommendations. Is something we still want to go for today, or?
You have to go today.
Oh, we have to.
Today.
Yeah.
We wait till there's less commotion.
Yeah, we take a 5-minute break. Everyone's had
More
that.
commotion.
Yeah.
Saying the money is secondary.
So they might be.
American Roadside Management. Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. All the money we can put is going toward the secondary road. Always first money within the secondary road. Oh, they could be.
Okay, so it's not necessarily earmarked as roadside management, it's just, you're putting money there.
Yeah, so when he,
Everything, everything gets filed for us and still comes up to a board decision.
Yeah.
you know, everything, the way he does his wages and stuff, if somebody's running a grader,
Right.
his 5 hours that day goes to the grader. If he's out cutting brush,
that day goes to cut the brush. There's no set roadside, no grade, there's just,
But are you gonna ask him to come back and report to you how it gets distributed?
well, there's no really, there's no roadside budget.
There's no roadside budget per se. In the history, everyone has got so all that money is still there.
Just whatever that guy does, even that day, that's when it gets here.
Who decides how it gets spent? Is that the board?
Well, I mean, it's just whatever there's to do that day, they go do it.
Okay.
There's no set
So they determine on
that day. If they're painting, we got a grade, they do grading, and if it's too dry to grade, they go. Yeah, it's just, Mother Nature detects a lot.
That's why some of the facts and figures that we're asking for are really hard to come by. They're not. So that's the. They don't sit here, stays in the street. It's not as easy as what we're reading. Yeah, really complicated. Okay. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, there's no roadside budget. There's no. Do that day, we do it.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you know where?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh.
So you do have your interview.
I might make it. How long this is gonna be?
She was in a whole spirit training.
Out of me, Steve?
That's You bet, you bet.
Well, it kind of come down with a cold guard last week's.
Totally honest.
No
trouble.
The coldness. You seem like.
Well, I, you know, but on the other side, my expectation.
Drinking all everything. Doubled up my blood pressure medication. My blood pressure doesn't seem to go down. My doctor in this morning, I called the doctor's office this morning, he said, oh, we can get you in next Thursday morning. Okay, I can bet you one. 145 will make, I don't think that.
Anybody.
Well, 2 weeks ago when I was at the doctor's, 118 over 70. I don't understand.
And 2 weeks ago.
System, and I don't
You
have.
told me I couldn't give you help you from my
Or recommendation.
and everything.
I can't get hold of.
I fully expected not to wake up the next morning after she told me that. I was, well, it's fine, and then all of a sudden today, that's the first day. I started to work with Ben underneath, I did lightheaded and. They would get her back and. I thought maybe I just have to switch to blood pressure medication or something. We'll figure it out on Thursday.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you gotta do that.
Yeah. I just thought maybe some of the medication and stuff I should take and figure it out. You know, that's why I gave it this weekend. And I just wanted it.
I didn't want to get a lot of.
I was.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, now, I have 2 copies of the resolution, so just because I passed out the copy that's you're adopting it, it's not, I'm not being presumptuous.
Right.
But she asked.
I asked for it.
Dollar amount for it, so I.
Right over there.
One time for the year.
All right, we'll get back to work. Take a look at the compensation board recommendations and, take anybody's input here at the table.
So I will say, the one I passed out is if you adopt them as they recommended them, and I passed it out that way just so you could see the amounts. I do have one here, so the procedure is you can either adopt them all as proposed or reduce them all by the same percentage. So you could say we're gonna adopt half of what they propose, or 75% of what they propose, or whatever.
Well, we had already voted.
Yours, and that is included on here at the bottom, if you see that yours is gonna be zero.
Oh, I didn't get down
Yeah.
that part. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Any ideas on what you guys want to do?
I would say we'd have to stick kind of close to what the rest, I was at, 4%, I guess, about half of what, or less. 45% of what they recommended, I think it was.
I don't believe we can go that low. I think we've got it because we'll have like our sheriff, if we don't, we can only go over the same. We've got a problem statewide on maintaining, for law enforcement. So I don't know.
I don't know if that's gonna.
But that's not, you're facing a lot of pressure statewide on that. We sure don't want to lose that elected official.
Are there still some counties contesting it?
None of them are, none of them. But I looked online.
Doing the whole thing.
Going, I would go the full rate.
Going ahead or where they are today.
Just where they are, I mean, I don't think they're hardly any of them going ahead to the full 130s, or, the full rate.
One of those counties said they're only doing like 2% or something.
Yeah.
One of the year ones.
I mean, I've been looking at 45% of what the recommendation was, is where I'd be at.
What have you heard?
But then I guess, I mean, if Ben on his, I mean, you look on the thing, there's other counties that give the auditor, like say, from $2,500 to $5,000 on top, what just he gets to do the
election,
or not the election, the
budget.
Yeah,
that's what.
I mean, I'd sooner do something like that to keep.
But you can't do that without
doing this for.
What you-
No, you can do that separately later on or something.
Yeah, the comp board has to approve it.
Prove it,
Right.
yeah, okay.
What we do to one here, we do to all.
Yeah, but later on, we could.
You could ask the comp board
to do because there's like 5 counties, 6 counties that do a sidebar, or however you want to call it, a sidebar.
Yeah.
25.
Some counties hire a separate budget director.
Oh, yeah.
For those that are big enough that, and the auditor's willing to do it, they just pay them a stipend in addition to their salary for their code required responsibilities for doing these extra duties.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way I'd sooner go.
I do look at it. I mean, I think Ben does far more than he's required to do.
Well, and Ben Ben's also takes on the additional role for the board of supervisors.
That's what you were saying.
So it's above and beyond multiple levels, not just that.
But I'd sooner, we did like a 45% of what they're recommending, if we could go do a side for him.
Would that require, if we did that, does that require?
It wouldn't happen this year. It would take another year.
Year to do it.
It would have to first go through the compensation board.
Oh, you'd have to put that in on the.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You'd have to put that in on the deal or whatever when you
talk.
Should have probably been a request to the compensation board if we're, thinking that was the right avenue to go. But we're a little late on that one.
Well, yeah.
Did you figure the budget with the recommended salaries that are
Yes,
listed
that's the
here?
way it works.
And we just approved that budget?
Yes, but you don't have to approve the salaries. That's just the way the system is set up. You could just save that money. I mean, it's not enough money to make a difference in the budget anyway. I mean, if I may comment, and
yes, you more than welcome.
I'm commenting for my own benefit and not trying to help you at this point, but this is the year that you have implemented a new salary scale for the other employees, of which some of them had corrections that were above the regular raises for the majority of them. And so I see some of these recommendations as corrections to our salaries to get us back in line. And so I think since you're already in a transition year where you're giving some people different raises than others, this is a good year to implement these. Also, I'll just say I've been auditor now for almost 15 years, and maybe there's been a couple of years where the elected officials got more than the other employees, but a vast majority of those years we got less than the other employees. Because there was always a reluctance on the part of the compensation board to make a proposal that was high enough to begin with, so the board had their hands tied. So this time you had a compensation board recommendation that actually tries to get us back where we should be, and so that's why I would recommend your approval.
What's the compensation of our county engineer?
He is 120,
40 something.
25, 20, 120,
15
120.
years in.
Sorry, I'm sorry, didn't figure that was all you do.
Go ahead.
So the one other
But
thing,
he asked for the compensation of the county engineer, and I think it's between 120 and 125. I don't know
Yeah,
that for sure.
Yeah, that's his role by comparison is, I mean, we gotta be careful, even, Ben has to just close his ears. Because we don't want, we've got issues all throughout the state where all of our elected officials are being pushed, because of economy, and if we're too low in the salary scale, we're not, I mean, look at our own, if our county engineer is making more, 20% more than our sheriff is, who's responsible for a huge piece of this county, and how many within our own matrix fall up in the $70,000 range.
There's quite a few. I have provided the compensation board a list of all of the department heads, not just the elected ones, for their comparison. And there were several that were above those of us that were elected, which I think weighed into their recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's valid.
and another way to look at it, if we don't go up a certain amount here, next year's compensation board is gonna be right back here doubling up on top of these numbers to the next. And I don't know if, I'm just throwing the number out, just 75% of the proposed increase. If
That's a corrective chart to make up for those past years. And I remember seeing both recorder and treasurer compared to other counties in the state. And these new recommended salaries would make them more in line. Not with Johnson County or Polk County, but other counties in the state.
No, we're way ahead. We're way ahead with this here.
I don't remember seeing that.
If you go online, it shows you. We're in the top.
You want to pull it up?
I got my computer.
Oh,
You can look it up. I did the top 6 above and 6 below. We're the second one.
With our current salaries against their current salaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
current, what are they getting?
it's like what we were facing with the audit, with the assessor on this, when we.
You take them top 15 or whatever out of it, or twice or whatever, twice and 10 times what our population is.
We had, the pressure on the assessor and replacement for those positions is, I mean, we had, if we didn't take and follow the recommendation of that, we were.
what are you leaning towards, Steve?
I'm
gonna ask all of us this question.
I think your number's reasonable. I'd probably go a little bit higher than that.
I agree with Steve on that.
I mean.
You want to write that down for the paper?
They all agree.
That is what you said earlier, Shirley. When we talked at the Explorer Line meeting, you said you weren't in favor of this big raise.
And I've learned a lot more since then, and I.
Well, I mean, that's what you told me.
No, no, you're right. I said that at that Explorer meeting between you and I've changed my mind since then.
I think some of the raises, I mean, coming from the outside in the public sector, I look at this and it's like some of these raises, it's like, wow, that's a jump. And it's not because we the other compensation scale we adjusted either. It's like, well, there you go. Are all these people just gonna bail out and go get a job someplace else? They can if they want, I guess, but same time, if this is the corrective year, we've already approved the budget to accommodate this. Then I guess I would be more, you don't have to do 100% of it, but
I know it's
75, 80% is I think is a reasonable thing. I mean, we can do 100, but I really.
I mean, the amounts between 80 and 100 or 75 and 100 aren't that big, and I think it would show support for us as elected officials if you just prove them. But
Population is strong.
What's that?
Our population is strong in Miscellaneous County. And now the assessment of tax of our overall land is going up. So we have a shrinking population and an increase in expenses. What does that do? I mean, the people that we have to burden that. You can't keep burdening the people of Winneshiek County.
But we still have to keep running the county.
I understand.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really
I
tough.
understand that, but you have to understand, well, then maybe we could go down on the assessment that we just got in the mail.
Well, we can't because the state has to stay with a percentage of what.
I will say, people react, this is completely outside this discussion.
Yes.
But people react to assessment notices because they can surprise people, but because of what we talked about earlier with the assessment limitations, also called the rollbacks, that you might, unless you had new construction, there 3% is the statewide average that will never be exceeded in value increase.
That's the one misconception a lot of people have.
Taxable value.
Yeah.
So if
Even if your value went up 25% or 30%, your taxable value can't go up any more than 3%.
And that's statewide, so you look at our chart that we had in the budget hearing and they were usually around 3%, but some of them were a little higher and some of them were a little lower, but like this chart, you can see that the total was varied. The highest was 2.5, or the lowest was 2.5 and the highest was 4. So that's kind of tells you if you didn't build anything new, that's the most it can increase in a year.
I would also say, we've talked about, well, Wisconsin's got better roads, but as people said, they pay twice the amount of tax we do too. So I don't think Iowa's tax rate is extremely high compared to other states around us probably. But we've got to keep certain people here to keep the pound, there's fixed costs. You got to have functions, so it's not like I have one resident or 1 million residents with certain things that have to be done by certain people.
Do you have any idea what our tax rate is like by comparison to our surrounding counties?
We have one of the lowest total tax rates. Our general fund tax rate is higher than most of our surrounding counties, but because our 1 cent option sales tax all goes into, 65% of that goes into offset our rural rate. It's for rural property tax reduction. So that makes our rural rate one of the lowest in the area. And so our total is lower than our neighbors. But that isn't true for the in-town people because they're not paying that low rural rate. They're paying the general rate.
The impact of that legislation that appears is going to happen with the state sales tax going from 6 to 7 and the local option going away. Do we know anything about the impact of that yet?
I can't say for sure because I don't know how the formula is going to be. They want to take the pot of money. They're going to take some of it out for funding that conservation fund. And so that leaves a smaller pot, but then how they're going to divide that up amongst the counties. Plus there's 3 or 4 counties that don't have local options. So now they'll get to pay. So that'll make the initial pot a little bigger, but then they'll take some out for that conservation fund. That makes, and so that makes a smaller pot, but then dividing that up, I don't know how that'll work. So a county like Howard County that has very low retail sales may actually come out ahead because they aren't collecting in their county that much local option sales tax because their residents are going other places to do their retail shopping. And so they might actually come out ahead on something like that. I think a town or a county like Polk or Lynn, where people are going to do their shopping a lot right now, they're benefiting from all these out of county residents coming in, paying into their local option tax. They're gonna see a big hit. We're in that middle area because we do draw some in that I don't know where we would fall. I purposefully lowered the local option sales tax projection for next year a few percent in the current budget, just because I didn't want to get stuck where we didn't have enough money. It might come next year that I over projected that, or that it did nothing passes, we get more money and we may have to lower our rural levy rate because it'll just get to be too much money. But for this year, I think that was safe to do it that way until we know what they decide to do.
I'm gonna hold you to that one.
We have too much in a row.
Yeah, cause you got about 10 other people that's gonna get this comes up too. It ain't just.
Oh, yeah, no, we
people on
got
this list.
assistants
You got all
Deputies,
assistants, deputies.
within
that-
the sheriff's
I mean,
department
it's-
and everything else, but that's already figured.
It's already in the budget.
So,
I know, but
put in there.
And
once you do it, they don't go away. Next year, it's, you don't
Well, but
start over.
And I warned my deputies that if you approve mine completely, I'm not passing on the whole same percentage to them. So I've taken their percentages down so that they are getting more like other staff. Whereas I don't think any of the other elected officials have promised that.
You just take like the recorder's office, the gal that was working there, what, 2000, what year was it? She was making 30 and now she's making, her wages almost doubled in 3 years. Now you throw another one on, yeah. I mean, it's scary when you start dissecting this and, yeah, I mean, that's.
So part of the problem is there's too many deputies within and getting right into this.
Well, it just complicates.
It's just the way it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's, yeah, we got about as complicated a system as there is. We got.
So right now, if you want to pay less tax, move to the country because that rural tax is less than people living in the town.
Oh, yeah.
Paying a lot, so.
I pay both.
You pay both, you can, general and. And
So,
They're also paying city.
getting back to this. Where do you think we can agree to disagree or disagree to agree or?
well, can we agree, let's start someplace, can we agree on 80, or do we need to go differently? It's a stretch, but I don't wanna lose, you've heard me say before, I'm a believer in our management being paid.
Got to. Yeah, it's.
And our biggest adjustment in the whole thing is the percentage what the state is saying we need to adjust to our share.
Yeah, so the total raises, if you adopt them, where they are $67,425.
67.
For the elected.
67 for the elected official, and 29 of that is the sheriff. So,
Yeah.
but that was the new back to blue bill that it necessitated. There are counties fighting that, but did necessitate a higher increase.
Are you ready to not take a raise next year? Like we didn't this year?
Well, I don't know what you give me this year might affect my opinion on that next year. I would hope that if you make the adjustment here this year, that next year, you'll be adopting a COLA type raise for everyone on the matrix, a cost of living raise, that we could get the similar COLA. I mean, it would need to be, obviously, they also get years of service, so you gotta kind of.
Now, why would we do a COLA raise? Isn't that more for people living on social security rather than the vast
I'm just saying
majority?
that, I'm just using that as a term,
Oh.
the.
I mean, we wouldn't do 8.7% for everybody this year based on COLA.
No, next year, when the recommendation of the company that you hired was, and they gave a term for it, was a cost of
It's a different.
Cost, salary cost analysis that's done by the federal government that you would use to adjust your salaries. And whatever that percentage is, you would add then the years of service adjustment, and then hopefully we as elected officials would get that, whatever that is. So if you give everyone else a 3% and they get, what did we end up with years of service? It was like a 1.25 or something, or 1.1.
Somewhere.
Add that into whatever you give them, give us that, then we're all working, moving at the same rate.
Yeah.
If you don't approve the whole amount, then I, along with others, will probably push the comp board to give a higher recommendation again next year, like Dan said, because I still think we're behind. At least mine is. I only comment on mine, and I make sure that when I comment on mine, I don't make any negative or positive. I don't try to affect the other elected officials. They can make their own.
Well, and one reason why I was looking at the 75 or whatever for this year, or 80, that'd be it. Is if we could put that language into the compensation board next year, that Ben would get paid up and beyond for doing the budget. If you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But I mean, we gotta look back, it was 600,000 last year in wages. We're gonna be $1 million just in wage increase in 2 years.
Yeah,
I mean, it's getting to the point where, I mean, yeah, it's getting ugly. I mean, I'm not being a hard apple, but I mean, I'm just being realistic. Yeah.
Those figures don't lie.
No, it's true. No, I better figure it out. I was the $9,000 what the total package was gonna be this year when I figured it out on my own.
I do 2-page for 2-page.
Yeah. I come up with 590, 630,000, 590,000, 630, and it was 600,000. I was just figuring it off my. That's this year's. Cause it ain't just the wages, it's the insurance.
Well, it's the
It's FICA and ICRS on top of it. It ain't just the sick. You throw 35% on that, now you're at 100. That's only
So
for
we had
7 people.
We had 20 on 7 because the insurance stays the same, but.
So if you did 80%, you would cut, what was it, 65,000 total, because you cut 13,000 and change that you wouldn't be spending, which is less than a penny of your levy.
In total, everybody, 3/4.
Yeah. Of your total levy.
Auditors and place treasurers, and I've got one for everybody.
Then you go by the county, there's some counties, you say, why, why are they paying that big number out? They either got a casino or they got something else, they got revenue coming in, they just gotta spend. They don't know what to do with it all. So you can't compare everybody's county.
And it's not apples to apples. That's exactly what.
I remember what county it was down south. I mean, it was stupid what they were paying their employees. Well, they got the casino there.
And if you hired a budget director that did the work that you had not wanted to give it to me, then I would see why you wouldn't want to give me as much of a raise. I mean, I'm happy to keep doing it.
But no,
That's cheaper, I think, than hiring another person, but.
Yeah, but I'd like to do it, if we can do it inside, yeah, I didn't realize we had. We got ahead of them.
Yeah, we do not.
I mean, I would.
Like 6 counties.
I don't want to hire that. If we hire anybody, I'd like to see us hire an HR director.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now Andy's fulfilling your HR needs, but he's so busy, sometimes we might be better to have someone on call, but.
I think so too.
From a liability.
Oh, we should have, you're right. Well, you know from.
Can take you down.
Oh. It won't be $10,000 takedown.
Especially when you're dealing with so many different union, non-union, elected, it's just a mess.
Well, we got public health, we got nurses, we got road shop, we got such a diverse,
All people, a lot of
diverse
liability,
workforce.
liabilities laying around us, like employees.
So these, I don't think these include what these counties voted for this year.
Yeah.
Increases of the.
And we don't.
And that is across the board. I mean, there are counties doing 2% and 3%, and there are counties doing 8% and 10% easy.
Right.
I mean, that when some counties basically follow that, and so when Social Security will put out an 8.5% COLA, that's what a lot of counties just went with, something like that.
And in these, each of these elected officials, it's really hard to compare these because it isn't apples to apples.
You gotta have
Some
a
do.
population chart to look at this. You gotta know their population if you wanna check out.
We kind of know some of the counties that are similar to us,
Dallas County
bigger.
owns West Des Moines.
Right.
You gotta write the population down first, then bring this out.
Well, I kind of throw out Polk.
Well, you,
then
for instance,
Story, I throw those out in my.
There's about-
I will say I provided to the compensation board a chart that had the next 5 highest, the next 5 lowest population counties, as well as the 5 surrounding counties. That was part of the research
because
materials.
like for the treasurer in Howard County, it's 66 compared to 75, and that treasurer's been there 35 years.
And they're making big differences right now.
They're making 9,000 less.
But they're compensating this year. That's not bad. Is what Pat Murray told me.
I think their comp board recommended was at 18% or something over there. So they have a lot of room to.
Yeah.
Fayette County is comparable to us, Henry County.
Fayette County fell in both of those lists. They're both within 5 of our population.
Henry County one,
So Fayette is close for more. Thinking. A lot of these, when you look at them, it's like, well, if somebody were to not move, well, they could get a job otherwise, that's what they want to compare it to. But they'd have to run for office. So
Pardon?
they have to move.
Yeah.
Writing in my.
There was someone who ran for. It's just to lighten up the conversation some, but here in 2020, there was a person who ran for county attorney in 6 or 8 different counties, figuring they would, if they won, they would move to whichever county where they won. Or if they won more than one, they would see which one would offer them the best benefits package. They didn't win in any of them. Because you don't have to be a resident when you run. You only have to be a resident when you take office.
So under the Condrey study, we do have some county employees making a double-digit increase percentage in
There
there.
are 10 county employees, 7 full-time and 3 part-time that are getting double-digit increases.
Yeah.
I did that, did put those numbers together.
And that was to get their salaries back on track. And we all agreed with that Condrey report to do as such.
And there's only 2 of us on this that are in the double digits.
Right.
The sheriff.
You and the sheriff.
The sheriff being because of back to blue.
Back to Blueville.
Well, and if you do comparisons across the state, that's probably pretty close to.
Because of that.
I do 75, I guess. 45.
We can't get there.
On that one?
You can't get there.
How about 80? You know, when you talk, like Ben said, when you're talking that, once you get to that, it's like 5%.
Because I got accused of saying, we're going to get a raise at all last year. That's what I got accused of. Yeah.
Well, don't go there again.
That wasn't what I said. So that's why I don't wanna say nothing. I just keep my mouth shut, cause they publicize, they put me down anywhere they can when they do it, so.
That happens to everybody in public
Yeah.
positions.
Well, that was the number I brought out.
You said 75?
Yeah.
That's where I'd be, I guess, my 45 and fly.
But if I was not gonna break the bank, but we gotta get something done.
Please join the conversation.
That's where.
I just felt I had to address one like that.
No, I mean, that was, I mean, you look at it, that maybe if people see that, it gets to be.
It's got a wholly
Quick.
different position for what
Oh,
I.
okay. But I mean, I didn't mean that, but it was like, you don't.
It's neat to know that, but
No, I
it's nice to
appreciate it.
know.
But if you do look at it, it's like, oh, yeah, that went almost doubled in a few years, yeah.
But let's, what recorder
No,
So here's some comparisons. that I
Correct the
made for the,
statement about doubling.
because
in
like
that
you
many
said,
years.
when, comparing apples to oranges. I mean, my office has one deputy and one part-time clerk,
okay.
and we paid for ourselves last year.
No.
You know, that
yeah.
could come for something.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wasn't thinking, I just, I mean, you know, people go back and look, why did it?
Because became the deputy.
Oh,
And I only have.
Then you
I
don't
only
see
have
that.
One part-time person, so when I'm gone, she's the reporter, she acts as.
Oh, okay.
So here's some comparisons of what I did. Because it's more.
Thanks for the clarification here.
Glad somebody's listening.
Yeah. Well, I heard my office mention. So it's more than just, salaries.
Thank you.
And it's even more than just population.
And I think Dana is making a good point in that, if I may,
Yeah.
is that we run our offices with fewer or similar staff as many counties that are bigger.
Yeah.
So we try to, I mean, we have 4 staff in the auditor's office, but so does the auditor's office in McKee County and in Howard County, and they're half the population. We're trying to be efficient with our use of time. And the same with Jane is getting by with 2 full-time and 1 part-time, and there are, I'm sure, counties that are smaller that have 3 full-time.
Exactly, that's my point
Yeah.
here. This is a number of people in the office. And some of them, Dan saw how busy we were doing passports, and it's just been such, that's been a big, time factor for my office. And some of these people have 3 people and don't even do passports.
You make a lot of money on passports.
We did.
And I will say that when.
And it goes out to jail. So, on my way.
I didn't get any special treatment, but I was in and out of there in no time.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
You bet.
We're right between 75 and 100, I guess at this point.
I'd go with 75, I guess.
I still am advocating for higher.
Where are you at? 100?
I'm at 100.
Mark, where are you?
Me.
Convince you?
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to, in my own mind, say we're gonna do less, but when it comes down to what the actual dollar amount is. But moving ahead, I hope we can all
But
remember.
you gotta put IPers and
Yeah.
everything and fight.
Moving ahead, I hope we can all
Then the
remember the conversation. Well, next year, then let's look at.
But you gotta look at us now, since we didn't take one this year, not money, but we're gonna be so backwards and upside down. What the supervisors are getting paid compared to other counties now.
The pay was never part of my.
I know it isn't, but you're gonna be so upside down and backwards for what other counties are getting paid.
Well, but that's not.
Then you
We
can have nobody want to do this. You're just gonna have people sitting here throwing money away. Yeah. You gotta have people in here making good sound decisions too. Yeah. That's my opinion on that. That's why they gave us that recommendation. That's what put us where we should be. Money ain't deal, but it's just, you're gonna be so upside down, you can have nobody wanting to do it.
So you just made the very good argument for going with the 100% for our other elected officials. That's
Well, when you,
exactly
when you
right.
go from 100 to 0, that's not really right though. either.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're at 0. Then you go to 100. I mean, that was not a real, yeah. But I'd be at 75, I guess. What?
Might be at 80 just to be contract.
I knew you were gonna do that.
I would lower mine to 90 for negotiation purposes.
Then you want to raise ours back up to where it used to be?
Can,
Yeah, right now, but
can't wake up, sitting, I can't now.
That was tempting. Ban on that.
Well. 85%.
I'll do the 80 then.
I hear 8, I hear 7, I hear 90, I hear 90, 85, I hear 80, I hear 70.
Well, I started at 75, 80's not so.
How about 85?
So-
We do
You
85.
hear Mark over there? He said, now Mark's trying to be the hero.
I'm stopping it.
auctioneer here.
Well,
I hear 85.
In my mind, it would be 8.5% is what.
I guess I should have started out at 7. Not very good at,
I'll do
80. If that's what we're gonna agree on.
Yep.
I entertain a motion.
It's 80, bring your salary to then, and these others.
I didn't entertain a motion.
Wait.
Calculate here.
Make a motion, but I want to discuss more.
I would, yeah, and I would also, like I said, I would take a discussion about what our plan is going now. Compensation for
Yeah.
next year, or even our own.
That's what I would. Yeah.
Bends, if we're gonna do something different. Or if we're gonna. Look at a COLA type thing, whatever, but, so it's not like,
Well, you can do the figures, Shirley, but I'm not going any higher than 80.
Do you have 3 votes on it?
I have 2. I don't know about it. Just.
Well, it's 4 that's at 80 or above, so.
I'm at 80.
I don't know. I can go with that. You can go with that, Mark?
You got 3.
it sounds like nobody's gonna go, I mean. It sounds like we're not gonna get 100, so.
Yeah, I don't
I'd
think
do
we
the
I don't
80.
think we can do that. So we have
I guess.
1 at 90, 2 tentatively at 85, 2 at 80. Where are we?
So you,
80.
she was,
Yeah,
got
so
3 of
2.
us.
I could go either way.
You were 90?
I'm 90. Can you be 90? Can you be 90?
I could be 90.
I'd stick with the 80.
I'd stick with, I could leap
85.
as far as Mark, on his previous comment, but I don't think I'd go that high.
How about 85?
I might go there. I don't know if anybody else could, that's gonna save us. It's gonna cost us,
I go
$3,000,
Go 85?
$4,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, we got
And we're
3.
nickel and diming our employees.
Yeah,
at
we
this
are.
point.
This one, so.
I want to make that
85.
clear. We're nickel and diming really good employees.
We're not nickel and diming them because
Yeah, we are.
we are already, that'll put us up in a much better realm and more so than most. We don't want to, and we're gonna have a higher level here than all of the rest of our employees throughout, and including our roadside employees, the ones that are locked in, and our jailers are locked into to, negotiate contracts for the union.
And that's, by the way, that's another point completely outside of this, that your budget you passed today did include up to 3% for your contracted employees, so you'll have to go through some sort of
Negotiation.
negotiations or offer to them to accept a higher rate.
To be, accept a higher paycheck, yes. I think that'll be difficult.
Wonder if we'll have to twist their arm.
All right, do we have a motion?
Because 80 would put us at 6.5% raise is what they'd be getting. Off the 8.75 and they're just staying. When you talk to the public sector around here, nobody got much over a 4% raise in the last 2 years. You gotta go by the public sector around here, so. You know, what the competition is.
Mark would be happy that if Luther, if he got a 6% raise, wouldn't you, Mark?
Any race.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You go around the public sector around there, there ain't. Yeah. We're-
It's, yeah, but I mean, the raises I get compared to what state and counties.
Are you at 85?
80,
Are you at 85?
I'd go at 80.
You want more than that?
No. No.
You had said 100 one time.
I was never at 100.
I
He
was,
was always 100.
I was at the 100 and I'm willing to go down to 85 right now. And I don't want to
I'll do
do
it.
this to our employees anymore.
No, I do 85.
Where are you, Dan?
I'm at 80.
I'm at 80.
You have to do what you want, Steve.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not, you know, I don't wanna, I want, part of it's perception because I wanna be consistent with some of our cuts and so forth. You know, I'm not looking at zero. That's too far out of line.
And consistent with what we're doing through the Condrey study too.
Well, I think we're every bit consistent with the Congress study. I think we made strong headway there. And with the COLA, if you use just a COLA on it, we'd still be. Our
COLA's 8.7%.
COLA is 8.7, and that would fit for 3 of the 4 positions.
I'll give them the COLA on what the social security is. I'll do the 8.7, that's 20,000 a year. Take that time, $1,600 raise, I'd give that all day long. Yeah, if you they want the 8.7 of what the average social security person gets in the state of Iowa for a raise. I'll give that. The
What I'm saying
8.7
is the
at
people-
20,000.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If they want.
But a lot of
that,
people want
at what they're getting.
They thought they'd get 8.7% on their current salary. And I'm like, that is not.
No, that's what I say. If they want an 8.7, what the average social security person's getting for a total dollar,
Oh, yeah.
I'll give that all day long.
That's about a 2.5% raise on it.
Yeah, not even that.
Steve, you're at 85?
I think I'm staying at 80 because that's what I was settling. That's what I had in my mind when we walked in here this morning.
You're not budging from where you were this morning.
Well, that's where I was this morning when I sat quietly this morning having coffee at about 5:30 this morning.
Was it good?
Huh?
Well, when I
Next
said.
to you, over. Contemplating.
My dog's giving me a bird. Mark.
Oh.
Well, I'd make a motion for 80%.
I'll second it.
We have a motion for 80% of the recommended
Salary.
compensation board recommendation. Is there, no? Any further discussion?
So we're not doing, so it's 80, not 85. So it's
80%,
Motion.
80% straight.
Everybody gets 80% of them figures are.
I don't have them calculated yet, but I have a resolution here that has the recommended. We'll put in a percentage and then I'll reduce those down to 80% and put new totals in there.
If it passes.
If it passes.
All those in favor of 80%,
And this is a resolution.
is a resolution. Shirley,
No.
Mark,
No.
Mark,
Better say my last name.
Dick,
Yes.
Steve,
I will guess. I second.
Dan, yes. Resolution passes. On a 3-2 vote. So when are you gonna have that? Or when does it need to be signed by?
I'm gonna have you sign it right now.
No.
I'll put the 80% in there.
Oh,
Change your mind.
okay.
Yeah, don't change it right now.
Well, then if we don't have anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
The motion and second for adjournment. Any further discussion? If not,
I have
all
the
in
80%.
favor, say aye.
I have to calculate.
Meeting is now adjourned.
I didn't hear the motion and second, I'm sorry.
I don't remember.
Emotion, I second.
Mark and Mark.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mark and Mark.
Mark and Mark. There's a question mark.
Well, thank you for 80% still goes a long way in getting it.
You still like those trees.
That's right. I'll still eat. I won't go hungry.
Able to buy groceries.
And a little gas for his tank. Yeah, that's right.
I want to thank everybody for a reasonable discussion on that. That went very well.
Yes.
Well, thank you for agreeing with me, Cheryl.
I'll get that in the paper, Steve.
I need to write that down.
I don't know.
I really got you short there, but I keep watching the clock and wanted to keep it fair for everybody, so. Watching it from first. Yeah, that was hard. I totally agree with you.
I gotta go to see.
Yeah.
Clark.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'll get it to you.
I'd like a copy of the one with you.
That's what I was thinking, so.
Thanks for those attending online. I'm going to shut it down now. Thank you.